Summary. Naruto is 4 years late and Sasuke came back on his own, yet now a girl Naruto look-alike comes along. And for what reason is Naruto not coming back home to them? Wait, now they have to take new girl home to her home village? New girl is also being followed by a group worse than Akatsuki who want to kill her. It had been 3 years since Naruto had left Konoha to get stronger and bring back Sasuke. Still, even when Sasuke came back 1 year after he left, Naruto had yet to return. It just so happened that Team 7, minus Naruto, had been called to the Hokage's office. The three of them stood in front of her as she looked them over. "Thank you for coming," she started. "I plan to add a new member to your team today." Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi looked at her like she was going crazy. "What about Naruto? You can't put someone else in his spot," Sakura screeched at Tsunade. "Shut up," she said bluntly. "Naruto himself has asked me to place her on your team. So, if you have a problem with it, you can talk to him." She glared at the pink-haired girl, daring her to say more. "Now let me tell you about her. She has been out of the village for some time, so please calm with her. And never, I mean never, talk to her about parents, unless she starts the conversation." Once she received a nod from them, she calmly looked towards the door. "You can come in now, Naru." "Yes, Hokage-sama." A sweat and soft voice came from the other side of the door. As the door slowly slipped open, Team 7 stared at the newcomer. She had blue eyes, which shamed both the sky and the ocean. On her cheeks were 3 scratches on either side of her face. Messy blonde hair framed her cheeks in the front and had 2 orange clips on her bangs. Her hair was long and in a ponytail. She wore a blue shirt that covered her neck but left her arms bare, and a fishnet shirt under the blue one. On her right arm was a glove longer than the left. A long sword in a brown sheath was on her back. Orange-brown shorts went slightly past her knees and revealed bandages that wrapped around her legs, similar to Sasuke, and one ninja sandal longer than the other. "Team 7, this is Naru." "That's just Naruto," Sakura yelled out. "Shut up," Tsunade shouted at the girl. "Naru is not Naruto." "But..." "Enough of this, Sakura," Tsunade cut in. "Hokage-sama, as much as I like listening to you fight with people, I still have to finish unpacking," said Naru. Tsunade looked sadly at the girl, but understood. "All right then, you are dismissed." With those words, Naru started walking out when Sakura's arm swung over and took Naru's hand, but quicker than any one of them could see, Naru pressed a kuni to Sakura's throat. "Don't touch me," she said in a cold voice. Sakura quickly let go of her arm and received a fierce glare from Naru. "Koda, it's time to leave," Naru said as she walked out. Following behind her, they could see a white-gray, fluffy thing pass by the door. "Sakura, I suggest you don't anger Naru. She lets very few people have any physical contact with her. I don't know what happened, but during her trip something completely changed her." "I can't believe I thought that bitch was Naruto." Tsunade threw a paperweight at Sakura. "Ouch." Sakura quickly cupped her head. Oh, was Sakura wrong? Naru really was Naruto. She was never a boy. Truth be told, she only hid her gender so the people in the village couldn't do certain things to her. It was the third that suggested she didn't tell anyone who she was or what she was. The old man had taken her secret to the grave with him. When he died, Naru no longer had the will to present herself in front of others. But when her godfather/teacher had taken her away from the village for training, she finally let go of her hinge. But she changed when something happened to her, only 1 year after she left, leaving her scared of people and unable to trust anything human. Tsunade watched the young girl as she walked away from her office, a white shape trotting next to her. Naruto was like a son, no daughter to her. So, it hurt to see how dead her eyes were when she came back. Next day, Sasuke slowly walked up to the meeting place Team 7 had always gathered. He was about an hour and 40 minutes early, but as usual, he rested his back against a tree to wait for the others to come. About 40 minutes later, Sakura came and quickly worked on startling a conversation with Sasuke as they waited for their last teammate and sensei. An hour after their meeting time, Kakashi showed up with a loud poof and Sakura screeching, "You're late." "Sorry, I had to take care of a dolphin that really needed water." "That's a lie." They heard a sweet voice descend from the tree Sasuke leaned against. As they glanced up, they saw Naru sitting comfortably, reading a book with one hand resting behind her head. "How long have you been here?" said Sakura. Not looking away from her book, Naru replied, 16 minutes and 49 seconds before Uchiha-san, 56 minutes and 54 seconds before Haruno-san, and 2 hours, 56 minutes and 57 seconds before Hitaki-san. They all gaped slightly. "There's no way you were here before me. I would have felt your chakra," Sasuke said, bluntly. "Though you say that now, you still don't feel it, do you?" Naru said, looking up slightly from her book. She's right. I can't feel her, Sakura said, her eyes almost bulging out of her skull. Well then, it looks like we have an excellent ninja added to our group, Kakashi said with U-shaped eyes. Still, I find we have one problem. We don't know anything about you. Kakashi started up again. Naru gazed at the older man with a blank stare. And your point is? She asked dully. Well, how about you do what these two did when Team 7 first formed? Tell us your likes, dislikes, and life goals, Kakashi said firmly. I don't like many things. I dislike almost everything I see, and I will kill a certain Uchiha within the near future. Team 7 stared at her like she had just grown another head. What? What do you mean? Sakura said, backing away from the blonde girl slowly. I do hope you don't mean Sasuke, Kakashi said gently, ready to protect his student. Yes, I don't want Sasuke Uchiha or Itachi Uchiha. I'm after someone else. The person that murdered my family, she said glaring at Kakashi. Sasuke slowly allowed his body to relax again, as did Kakashi. What do you mean? There are only 2 Uchihas alive, Sakura asked, still standing back. Wrong, you fool. Madara Uchiha is still alive. She said it so bluntly and so calmly that they couldn't help but know she was right. Sasuke and Sakura didn't know what to say or do. Their new teammate had just blown their thoughts away. How about we get to training then? Kakashi said, attempting to crack the ice. The 3 of them nodded. Sakura moved her way to Kakashi, as always. She never trained with Sasuke. He would just hurt her, badly. Not today, Sakura. I want to test Naruto-chan and see how good she is, Kakashi said, not even looking at her. Oh, okay. She walked over to Sasuke, who was already walking away. Well then come at me, Kakashi said, getting into a fighting stance, but Naru never moved. She just calmly read her book. Okay, Kakashi said, as he moved towards her, but was easily dodged. Kakashi just kept up his attack, but every time he tried to land a blow on the younger girl, she would simply dodge it, and her eyes never left the pages of her book. Sasuke and Sakura came back as the other 2 were still sparing. Sakura was limping badly and had a good-sized bruise on her shoulder, while Sasuke looked fine. Sakura gaped as she saw her sensei broken into a sweat, while Naru looked fine and seemed to be at the end of her book that she had started that morning. Naru slowly looked up as she snapped her book closed. Carefully, she put her book into her bag on her hip. I've had enough of this, she said, as she flickered out of sight. The 3 of them looked around the field searching for the blonde, only to find her behind Kakashi, with her hand placed dangerously at his throat, unusually long nails pressed against his skin. Sorry, but this spar is over, she said slowly, bringing her hand away from him. Naru calmly walked back to the tree and gave a good push to the ground as she jumped into it. Why? Kakashi asked, looking at Naru with large eyes. Why what? Naru glared at the older man. Why didn't you finish me off? Naru looked at him and said, I have no need or want to hurt my teammates. Then why did you grip my throat so hard before? Sakura asked. Because you have no right to touch me. Why, you little? Sakura yelled out as she limped to Naru's tree. Get down here, you little bitch. How about you get up here, billboard brow, Naru said, not really caring. Sakura brought her hand up and swung it at the tree, hoping her strength would make it fall, which it did, but Naru was already landing softly on the ground. Team 7 looked at their teammate, that paid no attention to Sakura, but to a figure that was slowly approaching them. Naru suddenly took off to said figures, yelling out, Hokage-sama. Sensei. Sasuke raised an eyebrow at the girl's sudden change, but calmly followed, with Sakura and Kakashi behind him. As they got closer, they saw Naru tackle one of the figures to the ground. Naru, get off me, said a male voice, which had an old sound to it. Sasuke finally reached the other group and saw it really had been Tsunade, along with Jiraiya. Naru still had yet to get off the pervert, though she had a soft smile on her lips. Jiraiya-san, what are you doing here? Kakashi asked as he came into sight. Jiraiya looked up at Kakashi with a lightly grim face. What? You don't want me here? No, it's not that. It's just that, shouldn't you be with Naruto? Well yes, you could say that. He took a quick glance at Naru, which no one caught other than Tsunade. Wait, does that mean he's back? Sakura interjected. I can't say. He may be, and yet, he may not. Jiraiya smiled at her. What? I don't get what you mean. Is he, or is he not? She asked again in a harsh tone. It means he's not going to tell us, Sakura, Sasuke said calmly. If you don't mind me asking, Jiraiya-san, how do you know Naru? Kakashi said, changing the subject. The older man pushed the blonde off him and stood up. before answering. Naru is my goddaughter and my student. Wasn't Naruto your student, not her? Sakura yelled. Before Jiraiya could say anything, Tsunade spoke first. As much as I would love to have this conversation with you, I think I should be telling you your mission. All eyes turned to her, giving her their full attention. At this time, the sand is being attacked. The target of this attack is Gaara, their Kazakh. Naru stiffened fearfully at her words. You will be going as backup. You leave in 10 minutes. Jiraiya grabbed Naru's hand just before the girl could jump away. Leaning forward, he whispered into her ear, Naruto, don't go using so much chakra. Don't forget that now, you hear? When he received a stiff nod, he allowed her to go. Team 7 watched as the blonde quickly disappeared out of sight. What are you waiting for? Get going. Tsunade yelled at the remaining 3. As ordered, they took off, before they could be yelled at anymore. Naru was the first one to the gate. All she really needed to grab would be her backpack, which she had filled with different scrolls that held different seals on them. She stood there a good 3 minutes before Sasuke arrived. He stood silently by her side, which she was thankful for. Over the past 3 years, she had lost her liking to talk. Of course, there was a reason for that. Sakura, Kakashi, Jiraiya, and Tsunade had all arrived at the same time. But as the two Sannin approached Naru and Sasuke, they saw another head coming their way. Temari-ne-san, Naru asked in a small voice, before bolting over to the other blonde. Naru, oh god, no, don't tell me they're sending you on this mission. Temari asked as she gripped Naru's shoulders tightly. Naru nodded lightly. Do you know who you're fighting? Naru's eyes sharpened as she glared at Temari. I know exactly who I'm fighting, and no matter who they are, I won't back down from this fight. Her words came out with an icy chill that caused everyone to stiffen. You two know each other? Kakashi asked lightly. Temari quirked her eyebrow at him. Yeah, she came to Suna with your third Hokage when we were kids. She was also Gaara's first friend. Team 7 gaped at her words. I would love to talk more about our past later because I do believe Gaara needs our help, like now. Naru growled out. She's right. Get your asses on the move. Tsunade ordered out. Team 7 plus Temari gave her a swift nod and jumped into the trees. Naru had a good amount of room between her and everyone else. If her companions could see her face, though, they would see her eyes glaring red from anger. Naru, when did you get back? Temari called out to the girl in front of her. I came back yesterday, Naru answered, not looking back. Team 7 ran up to Suna, completely out of breath. They were quickly rushed to Kankuro. They ran to his room, and hoping Sakura could do something help him. But a strange old hag named Chiyo flew out at Kakashi. Naru quickly blocked the old woman with her sword in its sheath. Chiyo flew back from the attack, but Naru still stood in a defensive pose. Do not attack my teammates. Naru growled out, through gritting teeth. The waves of Ki emitted from Naru caused everyone in the room to shiver. That man is the White Fang of Konoha. He is my son's enemy, and I will have my revenge today, Chiyo said, regaining herself. Stupid hag, I don't care who my teammates are enemies of. If you harm them, I won't hold back on you. Sister, look, this is not the White Fang of Konoha, said an older man in the room, while he held off Chiyo from getting into a fight. As Chiyo laughed about her mistake, as Sakura quickly made her way over to Kankuro. Naru and Sasuke watched closely as Sakura's hands lit up green. She pressed her hands against Kankuro's stomach, which caused the boy to jolt up. Before Sakura could do any more, she was pushed out of the way. Are you stupid? You will kill him if you do that. Naru yelled at the pink-haired girl. Hasn't Tsunade taught you anything? Pushing on his stomach in that way will cause the poison to spread faster. What do you mean? Sakura asked. Idiot. The pressure will cause his heart to work faster. Instead of making a fool of yourself, go and ask for a list of the herbs they have in season, Naru said, as she pulled her hair out of the way. Looking to the other people in the room, she ordered them to get her a bucket of water. When that arrived, her hands quickly began to glow green, just as Sakura's had done. Hold him down. He's not going to like this, she said to the people in the room. Sasuke took one of his shoulders, while Kakashi took the other. Other medical nin took his legs. Don't let him move because the poison could get stuck if he does. Gently, she took the water into hand and began pushing into the direct spot he was poisoned. Almost immediately, Kankuro started to squirm from the pain. Don't let him move, I said. Naru yelled as she tried to work faster. On the other side of Kankuro's stomach, water began to bubble again, but it had a purple substance in it. Discover more. Fan fiction anthologies. Digital book publishing. Custom fan fiction writing. Bookshelves. Fan art prints, posters. Custom character portraits. Fan art commissions. Online writing courses. Beta reading services. Digital art software. Dropping the water back into the bucket, Naru looked up just in time for Sakura to enter the room. Ignoring her presence, Naru looked at Temari. His life is no longer in immediate danger. I've removed the poison directly, but until I make an antidote for the poison that is still in his body, we still can't relax. Naru looked away from Temari to look at Sakura. Let me see that list, Naru said, extending a hand. Looking over the papers, she heard Chio speak to her. You're like that slug woman. Yes, I may be like Tsunade-sama, but she isn't my teacher, Naru said with a bored tone, not looking up from her papers. Could you take me to the medical store house? She asked one of the nin. Yes, ma'am, right this way. And the two of them walked out of the room. She's changed so much, Temari said with a sad look on her face. What do you mean? Sasuke asked from across the room. Temari sighed. Naru used to be bubbly, happy, and so bright. It's sad to see her like this. Last time I saw her was before the Chunin exams. She was so happy. She even told me about her team, some black-hair boy that was really mean to her, and some girl that dissed her every time they spoke, even though she only ever wanted to be friends with her. Oh, and then there was her sensei. She told me that even though he ignored her most of the time and treated her like an idiot, she still liked him. Team 7 stared at her. The story had sounded so familiar that it couldn't stop them from thinking about Naruto. Naru came walking back into the room with an antidote and immediately walked quickly over to Kankuro. When people looked at him, they saw him stir. Kankuro-ni, do you know who did this to you? Naru asked in a soft tone. Sasori of the Red Sand. There was a small gasp in the room. Naru's body seemed to get slightly rigid, but she backed away from him and started to pour medicine in a cup for him. Kankuro-ni, please drink this, Naru said, pushing the cup to his lips. Drink it all. He finished getting it down and plopped back down on the bed. Naru-chan, is that you? He asked, after getting a good look at Naru. She smiled lightly with her head at a slight tip that gave her a cute and innocent look. Hi, are you feeling better now? Kankuro coughed as he fought down a blush. I'm fine, but Gura. Naru's face turned hard and looked upset. Don't worry, we'll get him back, so just rest. Kankuro looked at her with his mouth slightly open, but it turned to a smile. I'm sure you will. As Team 7 began to walk away from the sand to follow after Gaara, Temari began to fight with them to go along, but the ugly hag Chio convinced her to stay. Kakashi-sensei, how long have the Akatsuki been targeting Naruto? Sakura asked, as they ran through the trees. Naru was running behind them all, not saying a word, but her body became very tense at the mention of her male name. I think it's been about 3 years, he answered back. Why would they take so long to attack, if that's the case? Sasuke asked, catching up with Kakashi. Perhaps because Jiraiya-sama was always with him, he answered while leaping on a rock. I don't think that's the case. From what I've heard, the Akatsuki needed time to prepare for the extraction of the bijou, Chio said, as she ran ahead of the others. If that's the case, why did they go after Naruto 3 years ago? Sasuke growled out. I don't know about that, but nonetheless as Jinchuriki, he's in just as much trouble as the rest of them, Chio said. What's a Jinchuriki? Sakura asked, causing Chio to go into a full explanation. Team 7 meets Itachi. In front of them stood the dear brother of Sasuke. Hello, brother, Kakashi. It has been a while, hasn't it? Itachi's eyes flickered between them, but landed on Naru. His gaze held no hatred, but a look of knowledge. It was a sad look, to say the least. Sasuke flung himself at his older brother, only to find him farther back than before. The midnight-haired brothers' fight went on for quite some time. Kakashi had joined in, but Naru's body still refused to move, for Itachi had put her in a Jinjutsu. _in Jinjutsu_. It's nice to see you as well, Naruto, Itachi said, smirking at the girl. Itachi, she spoke softly. You've gone back to the leaf, I see. Of course, just like for you, it will always be my home. They don't know what you did, do they? Naruto smirked dangerously at him. No, they don't. She threw her hands up in submission. I highly doubt that they would care anyways. It's not like they like me. Itachi shook his head. No, I think they do like you. You just don't want to admit to it. Naruto glared at him. You say that, and yet, you're holding an even bigger secret than me. Before you lecture me any more about it, how about you tell them that you're not a bad guy? I can't do that, and you know it. But I know that Sasuke will find out someday. I can only hope it will be you telling him, and not Madara. Naruto looked away from him. Why do you always make things hard? He gave her a sinister and sad smile. I'll see you again when the time is right, Naruto. Turning her eyes back to him, she nodded. Thank you, he said as he slowly began to fade away. Underscore back to fight underscore. With a painful gasp, Neru opened her eyes to see Sakura and Chio holding onto her shoulders. Her left eye began to twitch, and as she swatted the hands off her, she glared once again. Don't touch me. Neru whipped around to watch the fight. She wasn't stupid. She knew that this was not Itachi but an imposter. With much-needed strength back in her legs, she sprung herself at Itachi, her sword at his neck, ready to slice it off at any moment. Where are they hiding? She asked with an impatient tone. You think I'm going to tell you? I thought you would say that. And with a swift movement of her hand, Neru slashed the man's throat open and allowed him to fall to the ground. Taking out a small rag, she swiftly wiped blood off her sword so it wouldn't rust. It's an imposter, Kakashi said in disbelief. He's also one of the ninjas from my village, said Chio's voice having a disbelieving tone. Neru sneered at her. What do you think? Your village is completely innocent. And no, of course not. Neru didn't respond to her. She simply moved on to the way they had been running. She's such a snob, Sakura gasped out. Team 7 tapped down next to Team Guy. There was a field of grass that went waist high, covering the entrance to the cave Gaara was being held, as well as a massive boulder that made it so no one could get in. Asterisk. Neru stood away from her team and simply looked away from them, lost within her own thoughts. Kakashi, who is that girl? Guy asked, leaning over Kakashi's shoulder. She's the new member of our team, he answered back. Lee suddenly appeared next to Neru's side and went down on one knee, gently grabbing her hand in his. He looked up at her with twinkling eyes. Sweet Golden Rose, would you be ever so gracious as to go on a date with me after we finish this mission? Neru's mouth opened and closed several times, making her look like a fish. Closing her mouth, she tipped her head ever so slightly to the side and allowed a small, soft smile to grace her lips. Her cheeks were ever so slightly pink, only making her look sweeter. I'm currently not wanting to go into a relationship with anyone. Almost immediately, Lee's face fell, but Neru didn't let go of his hand just yet. But I would still love to go out with you as a friend. Neru spoke softly, but her voice was strong enough that everyone could hear her. She didn't have it in her heart to be mean to him. Lee just had an air around him that made the blonde feel like she was talking to a very enthusiastic child. Lee bolted off the ground, ran over to Guy, and pulled him into a joyful hug. That's good for you, Guy said, patting Lee's head. Sasuke and Sakura were looking at Neru, who had already lost her smile and was looking at the giant boulder that was holding them back from saving Gaara. It's a 5-seal barrier, she said softly. What is that? Tintin asked her, glancing at Tintin for a moment only to look back at the tag on the boulder. It means there are 4 other tags that also have to be pulled off at the same time as this one, in order to get in there at all. I see. Get working, Niji, my boy, and find these tags then, Guy said proudly. Understood, Niji said, as he activated his Byakugan, finding the placements for each one and giving out their places. All right, now put on these radios and all of us will go off towards one of the locations, Guy said happily. Doing as he said, Team Guy scattered off towards their destinations. Together as one team, Guy and Kakashi tore off the tags, while Sakura ran towards the boulder. Smashing her fist into the boulder, even then it didn't break, only leaving a small crack. What the? She said, stunned. Move. Everyone turned around to Neru, who had a sharp, mean look in her eyes. What do you mean? Sakura asked dumbly. Move now, or I'll smash you into the wall as well, Neru said, while tightening her left glove. Sakura's eyes grew wide as Neru sped off in her direction, ready to smash in the boulder. She just narrowly moved, in time as Neru successfully caused the boulder to crumble. Promptly, they jumped in on Kakashi's queue. The sight they saw was shocking. Deidara was sitting on Gaara's core, while Sasori sat next to him. Well, if it isn't the blonde Jinchuriki, Deidara said, in a smart aleck tone of voice. Everyone looked at Neru, who was trembling with rage. You bastards, get the fuck off, Gaara-nichan, she yelled out, while glaring at them with blood-red eyes, shocking everyone else. It seems she didn't learn her lesson the last time we saw her, did she, Sasori, my man, Strong tears were slipping down Neru's cheeks now, as she did all she could to hold herself back. I wonder if she's just as weak as she was last time, Sasori taunted her. I agree. Even after we nearly killed her, she still doesn't get it, Without warning, Neru flashed from her spot and appeared on the other side of the cave, smashing Deidara into the wall. I dare you to say more, she growled in his face. Deidara tried to speak, but coughed up blood instead. Neru, being so intent on chalking Deidara, didn't notice when Sasori's tail flew in her direction. Sasuke was getting ready to go help her when a sudden white flash passed by him, stopping Sasori's tail in its tracks. Naru's crimson gaze flickered off Deidara for a moment to look behind her. Good job, Koda. Koda was a white fox that was much too large for her species. Like Naru, she also had dark blood-red eyes that were glaring up at Sasori as she held onto his tail with her teeth. Of course, the nine-tailed brat would use foxes as her summons. Nara showed her long canines as a fierce growl escaped her lips. I'm going to kill you. I would like to see you try, Sasori taunted again. Letting go of Deidara's throat, Naru ran at Sasori at full speed, paying no attention to the long poles covered with poison coming her way. With great skill, she dodged under them and kept up her charge. Halfway near her target, she pulled out her katana and sliced at the poles, causing them to go limp. Suddenly, Naru felt her katana being torn from her hands. Ignoring the fact that her weapon had been snatched away, Naru kept up on her charge. Naruto-sama, Koda said as she came near Naru to charge with her. Hold back the puppet, Koda, she said, leaving Koda to take care of a newly summoned puppet, knowing full well the female fox would be safe. Pulling out a single kunai, Naru threw it as a distraction. As she used the few seconds she got from the distraction, she made the Rasengan. Running at her attacker again, she quickly maneuvered around him, crashing the Rasengan into his back. His body dispersed into several different pieces, scattering along the cave floor. Nara looked back to see Deidara struggling against her team. Walking away to assist them, she failed to notice when Sasori's new body moved towards her, along with her sword in his hand. A sudden pain in her stomach caused her to call out a feeble scream as she came crashing to her knees. I know very well that the scene was a water scene, but I changed the place as I had to fit it to the story. It's a minor change, but it was necessary for later in the story. Looking over to where he heard a scream, Sasuke saw Naruto gripping her side where a sword had been stabbed through. Leaving the rest of his team to take care of the bomber, Sasuke ran to Naruto, hoping to help her before it was too late. Ignored the fox fighting one of the puppets, he got to Naruto's side in great speed. Crouching down next to his fallen comrade, he searched to see what he could do to help her. Pull it out, Naruto gasped out, getting Sasuke's attention. If I do that, you will bleed to death, he said, looking at how the sword was sticking out of her on both sides. Please just pull it out. I can heal the wound quicker that way, she said, working on getting it out herself, only cutting her hands in the end. Sasuke bit his lip as he took hold of the blade, pulling it out in the cleanest way he could. Naruto's hand went immediately to her side to heal the wound. When she was sure it was okay, she stood up while reaching into her back pocket. Pulling out a very large scroll, she struck a small amount of her blood over the seal, allowing it to open. This ends now, she said in an almost ghost-like tone. Striking her bloody fingers over the scroll's writing surface, Naruto allowed the scroll to let out what she summoned. A very large cloud came from the scroll Naruto pulled out, and as it cleared away, her team mates could see a very large white fox. Along its first, streaks of red and black streamed from her eyes down to her two tails. Peering red eyes peeked, glancing around, getting the handle on what was going on, but as her eyes landed on Naruto, she quickly ran towards her hurt master. Naruto-sama, oh dear God, why didn't you summon me sooner? It had a very rough feminine voice. Naruto, Sasuke asked as he stood next to her. Said girl looked over to him with a faint blush on her cheeks. We'll have to talk about this later, won't we? She asked nervously. Sasuke nodded at her, confirming her thoughts. As the large fox came up to the two of them, Naruto gently pulled herself onto the 14-foot-tall fox, her bloody hands leaving slightly streaks of red on the places she touched. Kit, stop using so much chakra. Didn't you listen to the old pervert? Kurama demanded. I know, Fluffy, but if I stop now, they'll know everything in a flash, Naruto thought with sadness in her voice. Let's go, Kira, Naruto said, transferring her thoughts back onto the matter at hand. Kira ran back towards Sasori, who had taken off his cloak, showing his puppet body. Hearing a scream behind her, Naruto looked back to see Deidara expanding into a very unhealthy size. Knowing what would come next, Naruto ducked down with her arms around Kira's neck. Sasori's tail slashed at Naruto, but with Koda's and Kira's help, she dodged it easily enough. Damn girl, stay still, he said, attempting to hit her again. Naruto flashed an evil grin for a moment and then threw several different shuriken at him. Wanna come out and play? I'm getting tired, Naruto said to Kurama. She could just feel the joy and glee coming from the fox as he prepared to go out and play. Sasuke watched as Naruto's shoulders slumped, and moments later, he could see that her whisker scars were becoming thicker, Her well-maintained nails grew, and as her eyes opened and flickered red, a joyful and threatening smile slipped over her lips, also exposing her long canines. She erupted into a maniacal laugh. Fool, you should have killed us faster, but for that now you shall pay the price. Fox, Sasori said blandly. Kurama glanced at the preparing to explode Deidara. A small grin slipped onto Naruto's lips. Sasuke suddenly felt a vast amount of chakra erupt from Naruto's body, but he couldn't pinpoint where it was from. On the other side of the room, Chiyo, Sakura, and Kakashi were backing away from the expanding man. Kakashi-sensei, what do we do? Sakura asked in pure horror. I'll take care of this, he said as his eye changed. Concentrating on Deidara, he forced the man to disappear before he could explode. They sighed and altered their gaze to Naruto, who was grinning devilishly. Their moment of peace was severed as the ground behind Kakashi shattered. Swirling around to see what was going on, the trio saw a large stream of red chakra bubbling onto Deidara. What the? I thought you got rid of him. Sakura yelled. Kakashi glanced at his pink-haired student and then went back to the blonde. They followed the trail as it went back underground and broke up again next to Naruto. Their eyes widened when they saw Naruto maneuvered his body in front of her to block Sasori's tail. Sasori's eyes widened slightly as his poison weapon plunged into his partner. Naruto's tail let go of Deidara as she hopped on top of Kira again. The two of them ran along Sasori's tail, approaching him at a steady rate. Kurama easily managed to get close to him during his shock. Jumping off Kira's back, Kurama used a massive force to plunge Sasori into the cave wall, causing it to collapse over him. A light snicker brought everyone's eyes back to her after the shock that the battle had ended so quickly had ended. Naruto? Sakura asked, approaching her slowly. Naruto's red eyes flickered to Sakura for a moment, but quickly became blue once more. The moment the red faded away, her body started to give out on her. Kira sprang into action and took the back of Naruto's shirt into her mouth. Gently, the fox set her down on the ground. Thank you, Kira, she said softly. It's time for me to go, kid. Take care of yourself, Kira said before leaving in a poof of clouds. He's dead, Chiyo said, bringing everyone's attention over to her. She sat on the other side of Gaara while inspecting his body. It's stupid, really, going after someone we knew was going to be dead, she said, not removing her eyes from Gaara's body. Shut up, old hag, Naruto said, tears streaming down her cheeks. With the remainder of her strength, she pulled herself up and sent a glare at her. You have no right to say anything, so just shut up. Naruto, calm down, Sakura said, attempting to calm the raging girl. Naruto turned her gaze away from all of them with her face in her palms to stop the tears if she could. What are you doing, Chiyo-sama? Sakura asked, casing Naruto to bring her gaze back to Gaara's body. Chiyo had her hands on Gaara's body, channeling chakra into him. Naruto shakily walked up to her and knelt down to her knees. She placed her hands on his chest, doing the same as Chiyo. What are you doing, child? Chiyo asked when she realized Naruto was there. Same as you, old hag. You don't have enough chakra to do this on your own. How did you know that? Chiyo asked, astonished with the younger girl. Your breathing is becoming uneven and your heart rate is very fast. How can you tell that? Did you study under the Slug Queen? Chiyo asked again. No, my sensei was not Tsunade-sama, but yes, I did study under a medical ninja. I see. My, how times have changed, Chiyo said with her eyes dimming slowly. Naruto chuckled lightly. Chiyo looked up at the blonde girl just in time to see her cough up blood. Naruto's team jumped up in worry for their teammate and quickly moved towards her. Chiyo pushed Naruto's hands away from Gaara's body. That's enough. I can handle the rest. Naruto nodded slightly, but as soon as she did, her eyes fluttered closed and her body slowly fell backwards. Sasuke, being the nearest to her, quickly caught her before she could hit the ground. Sakura lit up her hands green as she ran it over Naruto's body, but she found no apparent problem. I don't know what's wrong, she said, voice filled with panic. What befalls you, my friends? Everyone turned their heads over to see Team Guy coming closer. Sasuke stretched his arms around Naruto's back and under her legs, lifting her up into a princess hold. What happened here? Neji asked as he and Tintin walked behind their teammates. Before more was said, Kakashi seemed to have lost strength in his legs and fell down to one knee. What happened? Everyone looked over to the new voice, of which happened to be Gaara's. Gaara. Several voices also came from the cave's entrance as everyone formed Suna neared their Kazekage. Temari and Kanguro tackled their brother to the ground with a huff, while different people from the village gathered around them to join in. Kanguro flung his brother's arm around his shoulder and gently pulled him off the ground. When Gaara was eye level with everyone else, his eyes landed on Naruto, who had blood still covering her chin from earlier. If Gaara had eyebrows, they would have been scrunched together in confusion. I think we should talk about this in my office. Together, everyone started to head back to Suna. Chio, who had passed on, was carried away by other ninjas. Sky Blue eyes slowly opened only to close again when painful white light hit them. Opening again after they were really a room of pure white was the first thing she spotted. Bringing a hand up to her face, Naruto slowly smoothed her bangs out of her face. Another fucking hospital, she thought angrily. What did you expect, some comfy hotel? Kurama teased. Naruto ignored him and slowly started pushing herself up, only hissing in pain rather than screaming out when a searing sensation went through her body, starting at the stab wound. Glad to see you're awake. Naruto's eyes flickered to the door where she saw Gaara standing with her team behind him. Tears came to her eyes when she realized that he hadn't been lost. Glad to see you're alive, she said in a scratchy voice. Gaara slowly stepped into the room and up to Naruto's bed. He ever so gently picked up some of her long hair, which had been taken out of its ponytail. I do think you have some explaining to do. Naruto knew. Sooner or later she would have to explain, but she had hoped it would be later. Gaara pulled up a seat next to her bed and waited patiently for everyone else to find a spot in the room. Temari and Kanguro stood calmly behind their brother, while Sasuke stood in the corner back to the wall. Sakura and Kakashi sat at the seats near the window. Lastly, Team Guy stood at the door keeping it shut. Naruto was clearly taking her time to explain. More than 5 minutes had passed by the time she had looked up from her clenched hands. What would you like me to tell you? She said, finally realizing she didn't know where to start. Why are you a girl? Sasuke asked, speaking up for everyone else. I have always been a girl, she said calmly. That's not true. I know for sure. You have always been a guy. Sakura screeched at Naruto. A minor anime anger mark appeared on Naruto's head as she sent a harsh glare at Sakura. You really are stupid. That was a hinge, Naruto growled out. Why would you need to hide yourself? Gaara asked before Sakura could say any more. What would you do, Gaara, if you were born a girl? Our villages hated our guts. You know, we're demons, like they say. Still, you were graced with the body of a boy while I was born a girl. Gaara was starting to get what she meant, clearly not needing a bigger explanation himself. But that still doesn't explain why you were pretending to be a boy, Sakura said, wanting Naruto to elaborate. Okay, Sakura, now pretend that you were hated by the entire village. You are a girl and live alone. Now stay with me. Remember, people hate you. All right. What would a small girl not even older than 7 do if, say, drunk bastards decided the demon needed some punishment? Naruto said while throwing her hands up into the air to add air quotes to her words. Tenen's eyes widened. She knew what Naruto meant by that, almost being in the same situation if it wasn't for Neji and Lee. Oh, I see, Sakura said guiltily. If you don't mind me asking, could you also tell us where you've been for the past few years? Kakashi asked from his spot near the window. Naruto sighed softly. During the first year, Jiraiya and I were just traveling around, but something happened, and the next thing I knew, Jiraiya and I were rushing to go to another village that my sensei was at. It was then that I found out Sasuke had come home. Still, the fact remained that the Akatsuki were still out to get me and all the other Jinchuriki. Jiraiya and I stayed with my sensei for the rest of the time I was gone. Though in truth, I wouldn't have minded staying there. Everyone looked at Naruto in shock. Naruto had her eyes directed towards the ground, and her arms held to her sides ever so slightly, as if to comfort herself. I think we'll let you rest some more then, Gaara said, standing up and walking towards the door. Everyone else also took this as their cue to leave as well. Naruto remained in the room by herself. Her mind was bolting back to what Itachi said. They do like you. You just won't admit to it. Naruto felt tears leaking at her eyes, but quickly hid her face in her knees as a comfort and to hide away from the world. Listening closely, a muffled noise escaped her lips, but it seemed too extremely similar to the word Tachi. Naruto leaned on Sakura's shoulder as they were preparing to head back to Konoha. Kakashi was currently stuck on Guy's back, and the two teams were waiting for Gaara, who chose to send them off. Every one of them seemed to be upbeat except for Naruto and Sasuke, both for different reasons, of course. Sasuke never smiled, so it was natural that he wouldn't start now. Naruto, though, was a whole different reason. She had been up the whole night thinking and crying. None of her troubles showed through, though, except for the soft frown set upon her features. Koda, who was sitting by Naruto's leg, started to bark as she saw Gaara and his sibling exit the village gates. Gaara walked straight up to Naruto and smiled at her sadly. It was nice having you here. His next action surprised everyone, even Naruto. Gaara took Naruto into a big hug, which caused Naruto to feel all of his emotions at once. He was thankful, sad, and yet happy all at once. Naruto happily returned the gesture by hugging him back. "I hope I will see you again soon," he said, slowly letting Naruto go so she could use Sakura to stay upright again. Naruto looked Gaara in the eyes and smiled. "I think we will. Take care of yourself, Gaara and I. Yash, let's get going." Everyone looked over to Guy, who had poor Kakashi strapped on his back. "Guy-sensei, let's hurry back to the village as fast as we can," Lee said as motivational as he could. With Lee attempting to get Niji on his back, they finally started off back towards home. Their journey home was uneventful. Overall, it took them 3 days to get back, but once they did, Kakashi and Naruto both had to visit the hospital. Naruto calmly sat on her hospital bed, waiting for Tsunade to come. Sasuke and Sakura had come in a few minutes ago after visiting Kakashi. Sakura was chattering away while Sasuke or Naruto would just nod to her statements. A huge bang at Naruto's door signaled the arrival of Tsunade. She walked up to Naruto and pulled her into a hug. Tsunade glanced at Sasuke and pointed towards the door. Pushing off the wall, he complied with her unspoken demand. Sakura remained in the room, curious as to what would happen next. "I need to scan your body," Naruto nodded and slowly pulled off her shirt and gave it to Tsunade. The fishnet shirt she wore underneath was thin enough that Sakura could see some of her skin. Sakura couldn't hold back a gasp when she saw Naruto's back. Long ridged scars stretched from one shoulder to her hip. Looking closer, Sakura could also see other scars, only smaller, all along her torso. Tsunade's hand glowed green as she quickly checked to make sure Naruto was okay. Breathing a sigh of relief, Tsunade pulled her hand away from Naruto's body and handed the younger girl back her shirt. Naruto smiled reassuringly at Tsunade. "I'm glad to say everything is back to normal. Kurama did a good job healing you." Tsunade smiled at her as well. "Then would you be upset if went home? I'd like to at least spend some time reading." Tsunade shook her head. "I'd like you to wait a bit longer. Jiraiya is coming to check up on you, and I still have to assign a new captain to your team until Kakashi gets better." Naruto scoffed at the idea that she would have to wait for Jiraiya, but nodded anyway. Tsunade ruffled Naruto's hair, causing her neat ponytail to become frizzy and psychotic. "Bachan," Naruto pouted, doing her best to smooth down her pale, blonde hair. "I'll see you later, Gaki," Tsunade said, taking her leave. A few moments after Tsunade left, Sasuke walked back in with Jiraiya at his side. The older man smiled at her warmly. "Overdid it again, huh?" A blush crept upon Naruto's cheeks, and she attempted to hide her face in her shirt, but to no avail. "Come on, let's go and get some ramen. I'm sure you missed the rotten stuff," Jiraiya joked. Naruto tackled Jiraiya with a hug. With that, she practically dragged the old pervert out of the room and down the hall. "Naruto," a manly but soft voice reached her ears. Recognizing the voice, Naruto whirled around. Her clear blue eyes sparked with excitement at what she saw. "Sayanai-chan." Naruto let go of Jiraiya and allowed herself to be pulled into a brotherly-like hug from the black-hair man. Sai was a good head taller than Naruto, even with her high-heeled ninja shoes. He also had a pleasant smile, not a fake one, on his face as he propped his chin on Naruto's head. "Who's that, Naruto?" Sakura asked, coming up behind the two, Sasuke at her side. Before Naruto could respond, though, Sai took it upon himself to answer for her. "I'm just a good friend of hers." His voice was dry, but he still wore a smile on his face. Sai, would you like to go get some ramen with us?" Naruto said to her brother. "Why not? We haven't had a chance to catch up for some time now." Naruto snagged his arm and snatched Jiraiya and started off again to her much-loved ramen stand. Naruto was walking ahead of her sensei and team, having very joyful chat with Sai. They were just about at Ichiraku when Sai mentioned something that Sakura and Sasuke just couldn't ignore. "So, Naruto-chan, have you found the ass that kidnapped you yet?" A visible chill went down Naruto's back as she shook her head no. "Jiraiya and I looked everywhere, but we couldn't find them. Hikaru, Sensei was becoming very worried they would come back for me if they knew I was alive." Naruto trailed off at the thought. Sakura and Sasuke's jaws had dropped a good foot at what they heard her say. Jiraiya, who was next to them, saw this and stopped them before they could continue walking. They gave him pulsed looks as he did this. "Don't ask Naruto what happened during that time," he warned. "Why's that? Clearly something had happened, and she needs help," Sakura said angrily. Jiraiya shook his head. "That's not the case, Sakura. Naruto has only told 3 people what happened, and every time she has to relive the experience over and over again. I suggest you don't do that to her. She may look strong, but the smallest of things can cause her to relapse." And if that thing turns out to be either of you, both Tsunade and I will take care of yourself, he said, growling out the last part. Sasuke and Sakura gave him hesitant nods before he allowed them to move on. Naruto. A loud yell came from the ramen stand as Sai and Naruto had walked in. Sakura, Sasuke, and Jiraiya rushed over to see what happened, but as they won and they saw Naruto sprawled out on the floor with a rather giddy Ayam hugging her tightly. Naruto's face was slowly turning blue, from lack of oxygen. Ayam, if you don't get off Naruto soon, she might die, Jiraiya said. Ayam glanced over to Naruto's face and immediately bolted up to let the poor girl breath. "I'm sorry, Naruto-chan," she said, scratching the back of her head nervously. Regaining her breath, Naruto smiled at her. "It's good to see you too, Ayam." "How does Ayam know you're a girl?" Sakura asked. A thin blush crept over Naruto's cheeks. "Ayam-chan had to get those things for me." Sasuke looked puzzled at what she said. "And what are those things?" Sakura, who was now blushing too, quickly looked over for Naruto. "Don't worry about it, Sasuke. It's nothing." He quirked an eyebrow up ever so slightly, but didn't ask again. "So what can I get you guys?" "Miso," Naruto suddenly called out and took a seat at the counter. Ayam nodded and looked over to the others awaiting their order. "Same," Jiraiya said, taking a seat next to his student. "Pork," Sakura said at last. "Miso, I guess," Sasuke said, not really caring. "Miso and chicken," Sai said, smiling. Ayam nodded and went to the back to not only tell her father their order, but also to let him know Naruto was back. That is, if he didn't already know. It wasn't Ayam who brought out the ramen. Ticho came out and placed an overly large bowl of ramen in front of Naruto. She glanced up at him before a strange glint took place in her eyes. She slurped down her ramen in astonishing speed and finished with banging her bowl on the counter. Ticho, who had been frowning till now, grinned at Naruto, who was smirking coolly. "Welcome back, Gaki. I'm glad to be back, if for nothing for at least your ramen." Naruto placed her chin on the palm of her hand. "Man, it's hard to think I haven't had even a single cup of ramen since I left." Sasuke's and Sakura's jaws fell as they stared at her in confusion. "And why is that?" Ticho asked in his usual gruff voice. "My sensei refused to let me eat such things because they are not very good for my health," she said with a sigh. "That's right. I didn't protect you from near death only for you to kill yourself with greasy noodles, Otto-chan." Team 7 could have sworn Naruto's had almost spun off her shoulders from how fast she turned around. At first her face remained blank until a huge smile broke out across her face. "Hakura-sensei." Naruto bolted off her stool and face planted the woman's chest in a hug. "Otto-chan, if I told you once, I've told you 1,000 times you aren't my student anymore. It's not like I can teach you anything else. You know everything I know." Naruto smiled sadly up at the women, also taking it as a chance to take in how different she was. Her red hair was still long and braided with eyes still green as before. She wore her usual blue kimono top, typical kanchi shorts, and blue shoes. She definitely didn't change from what Naruto could tell. Well, of course, they had just been together not even 2 weeks ago, so what did she expect? "You know she's right, Otto-chan." Naruto glanced around Hikaru, and her smile grew bigger, if that was even possible. "Hoshi, Kasumi Sora." Hoshi, a strong-looking girl with silver hair and dark blue eyes. She wore a short sleeveless green dress and long black pants. Next to her stood Sora. He was a brown hair boy taller than Sasuke and had pupilless, purple eyes. He wore a simple long-sleeved dark blue shirt and long dark gray pants. Kasumi, unlike the teens next to her, looked very much like Naruto, except with red hair and gray-green eyes. The smile on her face threatened to split her skull in half. "Itoko, it's nice to see you. I hope you've been good." Kasumi's voice was similar to the sounds of chimes. They were as delicate as she looked. "Kasumi-chan, it's good to see you too," Naruto chimed in as well. "Now, Otto-chan, would you like to tell me why your shoulders are so stiff and I can feel a bandage around your waist?" Hikaru asked with her voice, but a hint of concern could not be missed. Naruto let go and backed away from Hikaru, but never answered. "Namikaze-Uzumaki, Naruto, why do you have a bandage around your waist?" Hikaru asked again. "She got stabbed on a mission," Sasuke answered for her, gaining a glare in the process. "What mission? You're not a Konoha nin anymore, Naruto. You can't be taking missions from them anymore." Naruto's icy glare flickered to Hikaru. "It doesn't matter if I can't fight in large battles, or if I'm going to leave this village, I will always be a Konoha nin until I die." Naruto's gaze flickered red for a moment. "Naruto," Hikaru groaned out. Kasumi stepped between Naruto and Hikaru. "Mother, Itoko doesn't look so good." Naruto growled under her breath. If anyone could figure her out, it would be Kasumi. Kasumi stepped up to Naruto and gently felt her forehead with a hand. She's burning up. Naruto pulled away. Kasumi-chan, I'm fine. Naruto growled softly. Did it act up again? Kasumi pressed. Naruto looked away, not answer again. Still, in truth, she was starting to get dizzy, placing a hand on her forehead in hope of stopping the spinning sensation. Itoko. Kasumi barely had enough time to wrap her arms around Naruto and stop her from falling. Hakaru, Hoshi, and Sora ran up to the two girls. Hakaru quickly released Kasumi form, having to hold Naruto up. Running her hand over Naruto's body, she couldn't help but swear colorfully. Where's your hospital at? Hakaru yelled loudly at the Konoha Nin. Sakura stepped forward and gestured with her hand for them to follow her. What's going on? I heard Naruto got checked into the hospital again, Tsunade said, as she bashed open Naruto's hospital room door. She stepped forward and saw Hakaru hovering over Naruto's unconscious body, while Kasumi and the others stood nearby watching. Hakaru ignored Tsunade and quickly pulled down on Naruto's jacked zipper. All the boys except for Sai blushed ferociously. Naruto, though not much bigger than Sakura, definitely was still prettier. She had curves in all the right places. Still, she was lucky she wore her undershirt. Hakaru pulled out scissors from her back pouch and cut the top of Naruto's shirt until it down to mid-rid. Sasuke and Sakura gasped lightly. On Naruto's chest, just below her collarbone, Naruto had a large cursed seal. It looked like an armless dragon attempting to eat its tail, and on the inside of that circle was a sharp diamond shape. The skin around the seal was inflamed and bright red. Shit, it's already at this stage, Hakaru cursed. Kasumi, come here and lend me a hand. Kasumi ran forward, hands already covered in chakra, ready to help. You know the drill, it's on the 4th stage. Pressing her hands gently on Naruto's stomach, Kasumi formed a protective seal to prevent the curse to be able to get to Naruto's organs. Hakaru moved her hands to the curse seal and brought up one thumb and nipped at the soft flesh. Swiping her blood over the cure, she went through several hand seals and pushed a large flow of chakra into Naruto's body. This action almost instantly caused the redness to go away, and Naruto took a gasping breath when her body felt the change. Hakaru closed Naruto's shirt slightly and laid the girl back. Kasumi removed her hands and sat down carefully on the bed next to Naruto. What was that? Tsunade asked. That was one of the reasons Ado-chan can no longer be a ninja, Sora said, standing by his teacher. Ado-chan is very strong, we will give her that, but that curse seal does this whenever she puts her body through stress or when she gets very angry, Hoshi added. But what's she going to do if she can't be a ninja? Sakura exclaimed. Slapping a hand over Sakura's mouth, Hoshi answered. Ado-chan and Somi-chan are next in line to the throne, though only one of them will remain in the village as high-class citizens and part of the council. Sakura stared in disbelief. What do you mean? The dope, just some normal orphan, how can she be next in line for the throne? Sasuke asked from his spot on the wall. Sora answered this time. Ado-chan is for one thing not a dope, and for another she is next in line for the throne because she is our missing princess. When her mother died in the leaf next to her husband, the 4th Hokage, on the night of the Kyuubi's attack, Ado-chan was stuck here because that dumb council never told us about her. Sora's nails dug into his palms. I still feel that the council should be punished. Taking away our princess like that is punishable by death. They are so lucky Ado-chan convinced the king and queen not to attack the village when we finally got to meet her. His voice rose at every word, getting loud enough to wake Naruto up. She groaned from her spot and gently pushed herself up using her elbows. Ouch, she said as she rubbed her head. Itoko, Kasumi said as she pulled Naruto into a hug. Kasumi, Naruto asked in a small voice. It's okay, Itoko, everything is going to be okay, Kasumi said softly. Naruto mumbled something into Kasumi's shoulder. No, Itoko, you know even better than me that he can't come to the village. She mumbled something again. I'm sorry, honey, but you'll be home soon, so please wait a bit longer, Kasumi asked softly. Naruto clung harder to Kasumi as small sobs left her body. Mother, please take everyone out. I'll stay with Itoko, so don't worry, she'll be okay. Hakaru nodded and opened the door for everyone to leave. Getting the clue, everyone moved to the door, with Hakaru closing it calmly behind her. Sorry, Ado-chan gets like that every time that happens. That's another reason why she doesn't belong as a ninja. Hakaru flicked her gaze to Tsunade. I'm sure you gathered enough information from what happened in there, right? Tsunade nodded. Good, then I will make this short. Naruto will be coming with us back to our village. I will not have a discussion over this because you have no choice. If you refuse, we will wage war against you to get our princess back. Hakuru's eyes turned dead serious. Tsunade, of course, had no choice but to nod. If she caused a war over one person, then she would never hear the end of it. I don't have much of a choice, but please, just take good care of her, Tsunade said, voice laced with sadness. Hakuru nodded. I'd kill myself before I did something to hurt her. When I lost Kushina, it felt like my world had ended. She was such a big part of my life, and was always a good big sister. Having Naruto around almost feels like Kushina is back, Hakuru explained. Tsunade smiled. Kushina really was such a ball of energy and life. I can see why you would be sad. But I don't think she could have had a more beautiful ending. It's an honor to any woman to give up your life for your child. The two older women came to an agreement with that. What was that curse on Naruto? Sakura asked, breaking the pleasant silence. Hakuru sighed. It's a curse that Naruto received before I met her, but still the curse is one meant to kill. It works at times of stress. Its main focus is to slowly destroy its host organs. The only way to get rid of the curse through is to find the people who put it on her. How did she get it? Sakura asked. I could answer that, Jiraiya said, walking up to them. During our first month away from the village, Naruto and I had been making our way towards the village of Yuzushio. Naruto had no idea why we were going there, though. Jiraiya sighed. Everything had been going well. Naruto was training even when we were walking and getting really strong, really fast. But one day when I had gone to a nearby village and left Naruto alone thinking she would be safe enough, I then found nothing there when I came back. I searched everywhere but never found her. I chose to go to Yuzushio and hope that they could help me find her. In the end, neither they nor I found any trace of her, which is until 1 month later when Naruto and her savior showed up in Yuzushio. Naruto was unconscious and near the point of death when she got there. She had several small wounds, bruised, scars, and one still bleeding gash stretching across her back, Hakuru elaborated. When she and the mystery man got there, we did everything we could to save her, but in the end, she still ended up in a coma for 2 weeks, she continued. When she woke up, she refused to talk to anyone. It took another 2 weeks just to get her to make a sound, and that first sound was a sob, Jiraiya said sadly. Kasumi was the only person that Naruto would speak to for some time. Eventually it got better, and she started to talk to the man that saved her. By the end of that year, Naruto finally was talking like a normal person again. Hakuru started up again. That following year, I started training Naruto in medical ninjutsu. And it was then we found out about the scene. Naruto sat calmly in her hospital bed, reading a medical scroll, when her door was suddenly bashed open. Snapping her head in the direction the sound came from, Naruto saw not only Irika, but all of the Rookie 9 and Konohamaru Corps. A warm smile spread across her face at the sight of Irika. Naruto, Irika breathed out. Naruto calmly nodded her head in response. That had been all Irika needed. He hurried across the room and pulled Naruto into a hug, ignoring the girl's stiff shoulders. My God, Naruto, you look so much older now, Irika said into her hair. And you haven't changed one bit, Irika-sensei, Naruto said softly. Damn, Naruto, you really look different as a girl, Kiba said, coming into the room. Naruto smiled at him. Hi there, dog breath. Naru, Hinata's voice said behind Kiba's shoulder. Hinata-chan, Naruto called out happily, finally seeing her best friend. Said girl took that as a chance to walk out from behind Kiba and walk up to Naruto's bed. Why, you grew your hair long. Hinata pointed out Naruto's hair, which was currently out of its ponytail. Naruto nodded happily. I see you did too. It looks nice though. Shino walked up to Hinata's side and put a hand on her shoulder to reassure her. It's nice to see you again, Naruto. You look very nice, he commented. Naruto-chan, are we still going to be able to hang out like you said we would? Lee asked, walking into the room. Naruto's smile faltered some. I'm sorry, Lee, I don't think I will be able. I leave tomorrow. Lee smiled sadly. Maybe the next time then? Naruto nodded to him. Don't worry, Lee, I'm sure you two will be able to hang out like old times again soon, Tenten said, stepping in with Niji at her side, who grunted in agreement. Naruto, you look so cute, Ino said, walking in with a very bored-looking Shikamaru and chin-munching Choji. Thank you, Naruto said plainly. Naruto averted her gaze to the door where Konohamaru and the others still stood. She smiled kindly at them. What, not going to force me to play ninja with you anymore? Naruto asked softly. Konohamaru's eyes watered up, and before he could stop himself, he ran up to Naruto and slung his arms around her. I'm glad to see you, to Brad, she said, ruffling his hair. Boss, don't leave. Konohamaru begged into her shoulder. Naruto's hold on him became tighter, and she leaned into his hair. I'm sorry, Konohamaru, but I have to go back to Izushio, she said. Konohamaru sobbed slightly on her shoulder. I'm sorry, she said, not only to him, but everyone in the room. Irika stroked her head as an expression to her apologies. He knew it wasn't all her choice. In the end, it took him the whole night to calm down, so he wouldn't sob like Konohamaru was. Now what's going on in here? I don't think a party should be held in a hospital room. Everyone but Konohamaru turned to the door where Sora, Kasumi, and Hoshi stood. Holy shit, a redhead Naruto with no whiskers, yelled Kiba. Kasumi shot a glare at the dog lover and ignored him to go over to Naruto and sit down next to her again. Sora still stood in the door snickering with Hoshi. Naruto, still holding a very upset Konohamaru, leant against Kasumi's shoulder. Are you sleepy? Kasumi asked, voice laced with worry. Naruto shook her head. Not really. Kasumi frowned. Not really to Naruto meant yes. Just don't push yourself too hard, she said. So these are the rookie 9, huh? Sora asked. Don't look like much, he said in a mocking voice. Oh, shut up, Sora. No one wants to listen to you, Kasumi growled out. Hoshi bolted from the door and slammed a hug on Irika, who looked stunned at the girl. She smiled up at him with a toothy grin. Thank you for taking so much good care of our princesses when she was young. Irika blushed lightly. It was more than a pleasure, he said. I think everyone should go. Our little fox fell asleep, Hakaru said, walking in the room with Tsunade and Jiraiya by her side. Everyone flicked their gaze to Naruto and Konohamaru, who were fast asleep in one another's arms. Was what half of the girls said. That is until Kasumi pushed everyone out, except for Konohamaru, that is, and closed the door behind her. Naruto was once again alone in her room. She was packing her things into a backpack Kasumi brought for her. It's sad, you know, Kurama said at the back of her head, truly sounding depressed. What is? Naruto asked the fox. It's sad that you have to leave. I know it's my fault the villagers are so rude to you, and I'm sorry for that. But now you have to leave your friends, Kurama said. Naruto sat down the pants she was holding and sat down on the bed. It is sad, she said as she reached into her bag and pulled out a photo of Team 7. But maybe it won't be too bad. I'll have you, Kasumi, Auntie, Sora, Hoshi, Grandma, Grandpa, and… She trailed off as a silent tear dropped from her eye. Holding the frame to her chest, she let her tears fall freely. Oh, but I'm going to miss them so much. I knew I shouldn't have been around them, she told the fox. I'm sorry, kid, Kurama told her. What are you crying for? Naruto's head flung up to the door. Her wide eyes softened. Kakashi, she said plainly to her ex-sensei. He walked over to her bed and sat in the seat Kasumi had been in not long ago. Well, he pressed. Naruto gave him a bitter smile. Do you really have to ask? It might help to talk about it, he said. Naruto sighed. You know, I never thought about leaving the village, even when people used to follow me so they could have a change at killing the demon. Kakashi gave her a worried glance. Still, this was my home, a place to return to whenever I went on missions, and now I can't even call it that. This will always be your home, Naruto. Even if you leave us, we will always welcome you back here with open arms. Naruto smiled. I'm glad we got to speak to each other again, Kakashi-sensei. I'm glad we could too. Oh, on a second thought, let me tell you what I came here for. Naruto twisted her head to his side, asking a quiet question. Kakashi gave her his eye smile. Team 7, Irika, Konohamaru, and Hinata will be joining you party to make sure you return home safely. Naruto blinked once, twice, and then 3 times, and then ran out of her room screaming, Tsunade at the top of her lungs. Naruto stood at the gate pouting slightly as she looked into the forest. She and her family were waiting for everyone else to show up so they could get on their way. Ado-chan, please don't pout. It's not like we did this to be mean, Sora said softly. I'm not pouting, Naruto said with a slightly whiny voice. Could have fooled me, Sasuke said, walking up with Kakashi and Sakura. Naruto stuck her tongue out at him. Naruto, stop that. I know your mother didn't give birth to an anteater, so don't act like one, Hakaru said sternly. Naruto just huffed and went back to staring at the forest. Hakaru sighed at Naruto's antics and went back for waiting for Tsunade. It took another 10 minutes for her and Jiraiya to come with Konohamaru, Irika, and Hinata their sides. Konohamaru was the first one to actually do anything, that being he glopped Naruto. She just gently ran her fingers through his hair. Well then, brats. I'm going to stay in the village this time. I'm sure you won't need me with everyone else here. Jiraiya grunted. Naruto turned sad eyes on him. Just make sure you visit us later then. He needed and pulled her into a hug. Take care of yourself. Tsunade pulled Naruto away from Jiraiya and into her own arms. I'm so sorry that I can't go with you myself, but I promise I'll keep the village safe, if only for you, because you love it so much. Naruto gripped tightly to Tsunade's shirt and smushed her face into her shoulder as she felt tears poke at the corners of her eyes again. I'll come visit you when everything is figured out, Naruto mumbled into her neck. Then I'll wait till then, Tsunade said, hugging he tight, and then letting her go to look at the Konoha Nin. I'm sure you guys will take good care of Naruto. Oh, I won't pester you about that, but I will remind you that you all will be back in 2 months. No one will stay behind, because you'll end up as missing Nin, understand? When she got nods of agreement from everyone, she turned her attention to Hikaru. Take good care of her. Hikaru nodded. Don't worry, I will. She flicked her head, signaling to start moving. Naruto glanced back one last time and mouthed the words goodbye before hurrying after everyone. As she ran, a gentle wind blew past her ears, carrying distant voices that whispered goodbye to her as well. It took us a long time to put it under control, but when we did, Naruto had a minor relapse. When this happened, my mother and father decided that they wanted her to remain in our village. Thus, I started preparations, so Naruto would fit in better with higher social standing people. Our village loves her very much, though, so I believe she will be fine, Hikaru finished. Sakura and Sasuke both held looks of astonishment. I will agree to let Naruto leave, but during your journey back, I want to have a team of ninja escort you home, even if you feel you don't need it, Tsunade said. Hikaru nodded. She didn't have a problem with that. Then we will leave after tomorrow. Tsunade nodded and started walking away as she thought of the best group of Nin to take Naruto home. Hikaru and her students nodded at Jiraiya and Sai, fully ignoring Sasuke and Sakura. Naruto sat calmly in her hospital bed reading a medical scroll when her door was suddenly bashed open. Snapping her head in the direction the sound came from, Naruto saw not only Irika, but all of the Rookie 9 and Konohamaru Corps. A warm smile spread across her face at the sight of Irika. Naruto, Irika breathed out. Naruto calmly nodded her head in response. That had been all Irika needed. He hurried across the room and pulled Naruto into a hug, ignoring the girl's stiff shoulders. My God, Naruto, you look so much older now, Irika said into her hair. And you haven't changed one bit, Irika-sensei, Naruto said softly. Damn, Naruto, you really look different as a girl, Kiba said, coming into the room. Naruto smiled at him. Hi there, dog breath. Naru, Hinata's voice said behind Kiba's shoulder. Hinata-chan, Naruto called out happily, finally seeing her best friend. Said girl took that as a chance to walk out from behind Kiba and walk up to Naruto's bed. Why you grew your hair long? Hinata pointed out Naruto's hair, which was currently out of its ponytail. Naruto nodded happily. I see you did too. It looks nice though. Shino walked up to Hinata's side and put a hand on her shoulder to reassure her. It's nice to see you again, Naruto. You look very nice, he commented. Naruto-chan, are we still going to be able to hang out like you said we would? Lee asked, walking into the room. Naruto's smile faltered some. I'm sorry, Lee, I don't think I will be able. I leave tomorrow. Lee smiled sadly. Maybe the next time then? Naruto nodded to him. Don't worry, Lee, I'm sure you two will be able to hang out like old times again soon, Tenten said, stepping in with Niji at her side, who grunted in agreement. Naruto, you look so cute, Ino said, walking in with a very bored-looking Shikamaru and chin-munching Choji. Thank you, Naruto said plainly. Naruto averted her gaze to the door where Konohamaru and the others still stood. She smiled kindly at them. What, not going to force me to play ninja with you anymore? Naruto asked softly. Konohamaru's eyes watered up, and before he could stop himself, he ran up to Naruto and slung his arms around her. I'm glad to see you, brat, she said, ruffling his hair. Boss, don't leave, Konohamaru begged into her shoulder. Naruto's hold on him became tighter, and she leaned into his hair. I'm sorry, Konohamaru, but I have to go back to Izushio, she said. Konohamaru sobbed slightly on her shoulder. I'm sorry, she said, not only to him, but everyone in the room. Irika stroked her head as an expression to her apologies. He knew it wasn't all her choice. In the end, it took him the whole night to calm down, so he wouldn't sob like Konohamaru was. Now what's going on in here? I don't think a party should be held in a hospital room. Everyone but Konohamaru turned to the door where Sora, Kasumi, and Hoshi stood. Holy shit, a redhead Naruto with no whiskers, yelled Kiba. Kasumi shot a glare at the dog lover and ignored him to go over to Naruto and sit down next to her again. Sora still stood in the door snickering with Hoshi. Naruto, still holding a very upset Konohamaru, leant against Kasumi's shoulder. "Are you sleepy?" Kasumi asked, voice laced with worry. Naruto shook her head. "Not really." Kasumi frowned. "Not really" to Naruto meant yes. "Just don't push yourself too hard," she said. "So these are the rookie 9, huh?" Sora asked. "Don't look like much," he said in a mocking voice. "Oh, shut up, Sora. No one wants to listen to you," Kasumi growled out. Hoshi bolted from the door and slammed a hug on Irika, who looked stunned at the girl. She smiled up at him with a toothy grin. "Thank you for taking so much good care of our princesses when she was young." Irika blushed lightly. "It was more than a pleasure," he said. "I think everyone should go. Our little fox fell asleep," Hakaru said, walking in the room with Tsunade and Jiraiya by her side. Everyone flicked their gaze to Naruto and Konohamaru, who were fast asleep in one another's arms. "Ah," was what half of the girls said. That is until Kasumi pushed everyone out, except for Konohamaru, that is, and closed the door behind her. Naruto was once again alone in her room. She was packing her things into a backpack Kasumi brought for her. "It's sad, you know," Kurama said at the back of her head, truly sounding depressed. "What is?" Naruto asked the fox. "It's sad that you have to leave. I know it's my fault the villagers are so rude to you, and I'm sorry for that. But now you have to leave your friends," Kurama said. Naruto sat down the pants she was holding and sat down on the bed. "It is sad," she said as she reached into her bag and pulled out a photo of Team 7. "But maybe it won't be too bad. I'll have you, Kasumi, Auntie, Sora, Hoshi, Grandma, Grandpa, and..." She trailed off as a silent tear dropped from her eye. Holding the frame to her chest, she let her tears fall freely. "Oh, but I'm going to miss them so much. I knew I shouldn't have been around them," she told the fox. "I'm sorry, kid," Kurama told her. "What are you crying for?" Naruto's head flung up to the door. Her wide eyes softened. "Kakashi," she said plainly to her ex-sensei. He walked over to her bed and sat in the seat Kasumi had been in not long ago. "Well," he pressed. Naruto gave him a bitter smile. "Do you really have to ask?" "It might help to talk about it," he said. Naruto sighed. "You know, I never thought about leaving the village, even when people used to follow me so they could have a change at killing the demon." Kakashi gave her a worried glance. "Still, this was my home, a place to return to whenever I went on missions, and now I can't even call it that." "This will always be your home, Naruto. Even if you leave us, we will always welcome you back here with open arms." Naruto smiled. "I'm glad we got to speak to each other again, Kakashi-sensei." "I'm glad we could too. Oh, on a second thought, let me tell you what I came here for." Naruto twisted her head to his side, asking a quiet question. Kakashi gave her his eye smile. "Team 7, Irika, Konohamaru, and Hinata will be joining you party to make sure you return home safely." Naruto blinked once, twice, and then 3 times, and then ran out of her room screaming, Tsunade at the top of her lungs. Naruto stood at the gate pouting slightly as she looked into the forest. She and her family were waiting for everyone else to show up so they could get on their way. "Ado-chan, please don't pout. It's not like we did this to be mean," Sora said softly. "I'm not pouting," Naruto said with a slightly whiny voice. "Could have fooled me," Sasuke said, walking up with Kakashi and Sakura. Naruto stuck her tongue out at him. "Naruto, stop that. I know your mother didn't give birth to an anteater, so don't act like one," Hakaru said sternly. Naruto just huffed and went back to staring at the forest. Hakaru sighed at Naruto's antics and went back for waiting for Tsunade. It took another 10 minutes for her and Jiraiya to come with Konohamaru, Irika, and Hinata their sides. Konohamaru was the first one to actually do anything, that being he glopped Naruto. She just gently ran her fingers through his hair. "Well then, brats. I'm going to stay in the village this time. I'm sure you won't need me with everyone else here," Jiraiya grunted. Naruto turned sad eyes on him. "Just make sure you visit us later then." He needed and pulled her into a hug. "Take care of yourself." Tsunade pulled Naruto away from Jiraiya and into her own arms. "I'm so sorry that I can't go with you myself, but I promise I'll keep the village safe, if only for you, because you love it so much." Naruto gripped tightly to Tsunade's shirt and smashed her face into her shoulder as she felt tears poke at the corners of her eyes again. "I'll come visit you when everything is figured out," Naruto mumbled into her neck. "Then I'll wait till then," Tsunade said, hugging her tight and then letting her go to look at the Konoha. I'm sure you guys will take good care of Naruto. Oh, I won't pester you about that. But I will remind you that you all will be back in 2 months. No one will stay behind, because you'll end up as missing Nin, understand? When she got nods of agreement from everyone, she turned her attention to Hakaru. Take good care of her. Hakaru nodded. Don't worry, I will. She flicked her head, signaling to start moving. Naruto glanced back one last time and mouthed the words goodbye before hurrying after everyone. As she ran, a gentle wind blew past her ears, carrying distant voices that whispered goodbye to her as well. Kasumi glanced behind her to look at Naruto, who had been lagging behind the whole group, with only Konohamaru stood next to her and held her hand as they walked. What's wrong with her? Sasuke mumbled. She's just sad she has to leave, Kakashi explained. Well, that's stupid. It's not like she can't come back and visit, Sakura growled. That's exactly the problem, Kasumi said, drawing their attention to her. What do you mean by that? Iruka asked. Kasumi sighed. Naruto and I will be unable to leave the village until one of us takes the throne, and that could take years. So, what? If she has to be away for a few years, at least then we don't have to see her, Sakura said, mumbling the last part, which made only Hinata heard and made her blow a fuse. And what would you know? Some of us actually like Naruto. Ever thought of that? She yelled, shocking everyone. And just who would that be? Sasuke said, getting over his momentary shock. Iruka gritted his teeth tightly together. I'm sure everyone but you two would, he said with a cold voice. Kakashi gently put a hand on his shoulder and gave it a gentle squeeze to show his support but still calm him down. Iruka gave Kakashi a grateful glance. He sped up with Hinata at his side and walked alongside Hakaru and Sora. We're going to stop here for the night, Hakaru said, looking over her shoulder at the others. We only have 2 more days' travel to get to the village. Tomorrow will be the hardest of all, so I suggest you get your rest. The others nodded and started to set down their bags. I'll go hunt and see what I can find, Sasuke said, leaving with Sakura at his side. I'll help put up the tents, Konohamaru said, letting go of Naruto's hand and walking over to Iruka and Kakashi's side. Otto, come over here. Sensei wants to take a look at you, Sora explained. Naruto walked over calmly and slowly took off the blue shirt, showing only her fishnet shirt to cover her up. Hakaru placed a glowing hand over Naruto's curse seal, checking that everything was proper. It's a bit erratic, so just take it easy, Hakaru said, taking her hand away and handing Naruto's shirt back. Naruto pulled her shirt back on and turned around to see Sasuke and Sakura staring at her. What? She asked softly. How did you get that scar? Sasuke asked. With something sharp, Naruto said, stating the obvious. That's not what I meant, Sasuke growled out. Naruto opened her mouth to say something back, but seeing Hinata coming back into the clearing with the water containers she had gone to fill. Naruto walked away without looking back. Stopping next to Hinata, she gave her a soft smile. I found a nice stream not too far from here, Hinata said softly. That's good. It means we're right on track then, Naruto said equally softly. The rest of their evening had been spent eating and talking until everyone had gone to their tents. The next morning, Naruto had been the first one to wake up. Crawling out of her tent, she went to the still barley-lit fire and threw more wood into it. Grabbing a small pot, she set it up so she could cook with it. Pulling out a scroll, she summoned out the vegetables and other ingredients she had stored in it and started a small stew. Sitting there, she calmly stared into the fire until a gentle hand touched her shoulder. Looking up, she saw Iruka smiling at her with a sad smile. I see my lessons haven't gone to waste. No, they haven't, Naruto said, scooting over so he could sit next to her. Pulling Naruto into a hug, Iruka sat next to her. Would you be bothered if I visit you every so often, once you settle in? Naruto clung harder to his shirt because of his words. I don't want to be a nuisance, Naruto mumbled. That's not possible, not for you at least. It won't be a nuisance, Naruto. I want to see you, Iruka said, stroking her head. Tears pricked at the corner of her eyes. I would like that very much, she said, flinging her arms around his shoulders. Iruka shushed her to calm her down. Even now, he couldn't stand her crying. She would always be a daughter to him. After eating the breakfast made for them and fawning over how good it was, everyone finally started to pack up and get on their way. Naruto walked calmly next to Kasumi, chatting about something no one else could hear. Everything had been going well, and they had made good time, but as they carried on, the trees grew to be thicker and thin out, along with there being more streams passing by them. Coming close to a clearing, everyone but the Uzushio Nin gasped at the sight in front of them. Running off a cliff was a field of water that covered all the ground, and growing from that ground, trees even bigger than the ones at Konoha grew and covered the sun from sight. Wow, Hinata breathed. Pretty, isn't it? Hakaru asked, while everyone else just nodded. Well, let's get going. Hoshi yelled as she jumped into the trees and sped away, taking that as their K to follow. Irika glanced around and noticed Naruto wasn't with them. Looking back, he saw a pale Naruto standing at the edge of the cliff, frozen. He jumped back to her side and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You okay, Naruto? Naruto looked up at him and slung her arms around his chest, shaking with fear. Something wrong? Kakashi asked, coming up to him. Irika shrugged at him. He glanced down at Naruto, who was loosening her hold on him. Sorry, she mumbled quietly before jumping into the trees, following everyone else. The two teachers glanced at one another in confusion, but carried on after her. Naruto jumped through the trees, but her gracefulness had been left behind at the cliff. Every so often she'd have to use a tree to regain her balance. Sasuke jumped onto a branch that Naruto was just about to hop to, but as she landed, her footing became uneven and she started to fall. Sasuke, on instinct, grabbed Naruto's arm and pulled her to him. Naruto, of course, clung to Sasuke tightly, trembling strongly enough that her knees kept trying to buckle and would have if Sasuke wasn't holding her up. Kasumi quickly ran to their side and put a gentle hand on the small of Naruto's back. Naruto instantly strengthened her hold around Sasuke. What's wrong with her? Sasuke gasped out, with it getting harder to breath. Kasumi glanced at Sasuke for a moment. She can't swim and has a very large fear of water, Kasumi said as she wrapped her arms around Naruto's waist. How's that possible? I've seen her swim a lot of times when we were Jinin, Sasuke said sharply. Sasuke-san, I'm sure you can figure out why on your own, she said as she started pulling Naruto to dislodge her from Sasuke. Itoko, let go. Kasumi grunted when she was having little luck pulling Naruto off. No, Naruto whined as her hold on Sasuke got stronger. Kasumi gave up with a huff. I'm sure if you don't let go now, we may end up having to deal with a jealous, homicidal Raven. Naruto's arms immediately flew off Sasuke into Katsumi's waiting arms. There's C. No problem at all, Katsumi said with triumph. Shut up. Naruto whined as the two took off and started jumping through the trees, leaving behind a very confused Sasuke. They had traveled a great amount of land with nothing happening, but as everyone stopped on one of the larger trees to catch their breath, it was then a random barrage of shuriken were sent at them. To avoid getting hit, everyone ended up scrambling to other trees. Kakashi, Hinata, and Irika in one, Sasuke and Sakura in another, Hasuka, Kasumi, Sora, and Hakaru in another. Naruto and Konohamaru were in their own, and farther away from the rest. Naruto, who had grabbed Konohamaru as she jumped, was panting heavily as she sat down her brother figure. Don't get hit, okay? Naruto said to him as she pulled out a kunai to guard herself and Konohamaru. Konohamaru took the hint and pulled out his own kunai and took stance next to his sister. Don't worry about me. I'm a Jinin now, Konohamaru said with a grin. Naruto smiled at him. That's what I'm worried about, she said cheerfully as she dodged another kunai. Konohamaru pouted at her words, but his attention was taken away from her when he had to hold some strange man dressed in a pure white coat. Naruto, on the other hand, had also got into her own fight, like everyone else. Flinging a kunai at one of the men's head, she hit dead on between his eyes. The fight for her was easy for the most part, if was just sitting to the branch properly that had taken her attention away from a man that was coming at her. Before she had the time to defend herself, she found that her wrists had been bound together. A kunai was placed at her throat before she could turn around and retaliate with a kick. Akitsune-chan, it's so to see you again. I was so worried that I wouldn't get to play with you anymore, a slick, deep voice whispered into her ear. Naruto paled. She knew this voice. How could she ever forget it? She shut her eyes tightly together and gave an attempt to stop shaking. Weak, he said before shoving Naruto harshly off the tree branch. She squeaked slightly with fear, but refused to scream as she plummeted towards the water. Kasumi had just knocked some woman that Konohamaru was having trouble with off the tree when she heard a familiar squeak of fear. Glancing around, she spotted Naruto falling towards the water with her arms bound. She moved herself to jump in and save her cousin, but before she could even move from the branch, she saw a black cloak cover Naruto and whisked her way from the water and stood quietly on one of the tree branches. Katsumi jumped at the chakra signature, but was happy to know who it was, no matter how suddenly they had appeared. Running over to the clocked figure and Naruto, she quickly forced chakra around her hand and cut the rope binding her arms. Naruto flung her arms around the shoulders of the clocked figure and shoved her face in the crook of their neck. The figure tightened his hold around her and shushed her softly. Kasumi glanced around and found that they were no longer under attack anymore, but everyone had their eyes on the trio. Sora was the first to make a more, before slapping the figure, which was taller than him by a head, in the shoulder. "Do you know how late you are? Oto-chan been waiting for you since we left the village," he yelled. The figure had yet to say anything at the accusation, though. "Who's that?" Kakashi asked from his branch. "That's Oto-chan's fiancé," Hoshi exclaimed gleefully. What do you mean?" Hinata asked, walking towards the silver-head girl. Hakaru stepped forward. "This is the man that Naruto plans to marry." She meant exactly what she said. But she's so young." Irika all but gasped. Hakaru inclined her head a bit. "True, but I do know some nin get married when they're 12, and I don't blame Naruto in wanting to get married no either, considering she has known this man for years, and he was the one that saved her." This statement caught everyone's attention. "But who is he?" Sasuke asked, stepping towards them. The Uzushio nin glanced at Naruto and the cloaked man. "I will allow Naruto to tell you that later, when she wants to." Hakaru turned back to the group. "Now then, unless you want to sleep in a tree tonight, I suggest we get moving. We still have quite a bit of land left to cover before we are away from the water." Casting curious glances at Naruto and the man again, everyone followed after Hakaru once again. Everyone sat calmly around a fire Sasuke and Sakura had made. Naruto was still clutching tightly to the mystery man, refusing to let go or even talk, but at least she had stopped shaking. "Karasu, do you want to join us by the fire?" asked Katsumi, leaning back to look at him. After a few moments of thought, he finally stood up from the base of the tree he sat at and walked over to sit with the rest of the group. "Did your abroad mission go well?" Hakaru asked. The only response was a slight incline of his head. "That's good. At least we have one less man we have to worry about," she said with a sigh. Naruto mumbled something into the man's shoulder, which caused everyone to snap their attention over to her. "What was that?" Hakaru asked. Naruto pulled her faces away from his neck and looked over to Hakaru with sad, fearful eyes. "They're coming back," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" Sora asked, leaning towards her. "It was him. He's back," she said in a ghostly whisper. "You don't mean him, do you?" Kasumi asked, leaning down next to her. Naruto nodded numbly. Kasumi turned ghostly pale. "This isn't good," she mumbled. The cloaked man strengthens his hold around Naruto, who only turned back to hold him as well. "Who is he?" Kakashi asked, getting worried about his student. "The man who kidnapped Itoko, Kuromaki." "Wait, isn't he an illegal slave trader?" Irika asked, outraged. Kasumi nodded. "Yes. In a way, we could say we're lucky. If it had not been for Karasu here, Naruto would have either died or been sold as a slave." Hinata pulled Konohamaru to her side and rubbed the sobbing boy's back. "What does she mean he's back?" she asked softly. "Because of who Naruto's parents are, master sealers, mind you. There are seals made by them all over the nin countries. Only someone with their blood can break those seals, and Naruto is the last Namikaze and the only one birthed by Kushina, making her the only one able to break the seals. This is what they used her for, but not without having their fun first," Kasumi explained, anger. There was a small growl that came from the clocked man as he pulled Naruto close to him possessively, which caused Kasumi to smile. "Don't worry, Karasu. Naruto won't end up back with them even if it kills me," Kasumi said, lightly stroking Naruto's head before standing up and going back to her spot. "I don't think you have to worry, Kasumi. Naruto does have her own knight in shining armor. I think she'll be okay," Sora said, placing a hand on Kasumi's shoulder. Kasumi blushed and looked away from him. "I know that," she pouted, sticking out her bottom lip in a similar way to Naruto. Irika giggled at the familiar action. "You and Naruto are so much alike. It's hard to believe that you two didn't grow up together or as sisters." Kasumi smiled. "Like Mom always says about that." Hakaru joined in at this part. "All Uzumakis are joined at heart, even if we aren't together at all times." Sora and Hoshi snickered at this. "How's that even possible?" Sakura asked. Hoshi smirked. "It's a blood limit. Though it doesn't work on the battlefield, it does come in handy when they're locating family members. That's why Oto-chan didn't freak out when she first met Kasumi and her mother. She already knew them." "That makes sense," Kakashi mumbled. Konohamaru sat himself next to Naruto and Karasu. "Nachan, could we see who he is?" he asked, pointing at Karasu. Naruto smiled sadly at him. "Can you wait till morning?" Konohamaru nodded softly. Naruto stretched out a shaky hand and stroked his head. He smiled at her and softly removed her hand. Naruto brought that hand back to her face to try and stifle a yawn. Looks like someone needs to get to sleep, Hikaru said, standing from her spot. As should we. Sora stood from his spot and made signs for a jutsu and spat large amounts of water on the fire. Well, let's get to bed so we can continue in the morning. With that, everyone went to their tents for the night, not knowing what would meet him the next day. Naruto crawled out of her tent and calmly got to work making breakfast for everyone as she had done the day before. Just as she had finished throwing in the last ingredient, snake-like arms made their way around her waist and pulled her to a large warm chest. Glancing up, she smiled at his soft obsidian eyes. "Morning," she whispered while using her hand to stroke his cheek. "Morning, Koi," his silky voice rumbled past her ears. Gently turning around in his arms, she placed a gentle kiss on his lips and was pulled into a more intimate hug. "Get a room." Naruto broke the kiss to glare at Sora. "Well, maybe you should get a shirt," Naruto commented on the fact Sora was still only in his boxers. Sora blushed and quickly retreated back into his tent to get dressed. "Will he ever learn?" Kurasa chuckled. Naruto shrugged and kissed him once more before pulling out of his hold and going to stir the pot. "I think he will always be that way," Naruto commented. Karasu walked over to the pot and glanced inside. "Rabbit then?" he asked, spotting rabbit meat in the mix. Naruto puffed out her cheeks. "When I have a fox demon inside me, what else do you expect?" Karasu smirked. "Something smells good." They both looked up to see Kakashi walking over with Iruka at his side. Naruto smiled at them. "It'll be done soon." The Toe sat down next to Naruto, but their eyes were on Raven. "So you are going to tell us who he is today, right?" Kakashi asked, looking skeptical. Naruto nodded. "Yup, after everyone eats." She looked over to Iruka, who had threatening eyes pointed at Karasu, which made Naruto nervous. Pulling out some bowls, Naruto handed one full with the stew to Iruka before he could say anything bad. She finished handing everyone their portion and sat down next to Karasu, leaning against his shoulder. "So how did you guys sleep?" Naruto asked around a mouthful of meat. Kakashi smiled. "I slept well." "Same here," Iruka said, nodding. "Food." Everyone turned to Konohamaru, who was walking like a zombie. Naruto grinned at him and pulled him down to her side. "Food it is, young prince," she said, handing him a bowl. Konohamaru gladly took a bite and hummed at the great flavor. "Nachon, you really cook too good for your own good." Naruto chuckled at the compliment and shoved another spoonful into her mouth. By the time she finished her bowl, everyone else had come out of their tent and started eating what was left of the stew. "Oto-chan, don't forget you promised to tell them who Karasu really is today," Hoshi said cheerfully. Naruto growled under breath. "Of course, we wouldn't want to forget that," she said with fake happiness. Gently, she placed her hands on either side of Karasu's head and gazed into his eyes, calmly asking for permission. Seeing trust in the other's eyes, she gently pulled the hood back, revealing creamy white skin, dark, almost black eyes, and black hair. Everyone remained silent, some because they were too stunned to even move, and others because they knew this was not their place to speak. Naruto pulled away and glanced at the others. It was this action that caused Sasuke to finally spring into action. Summoning Chidori to his hand, he flung himself at Itachi, yelling his name loudly, making the birds scatter. Naruto sprung from her spot and grabbed Sasuke's wrist tightly to keep him at bay. "Get out of the way," Sasuke growled at her. Her only response was strengthening her grip and looked him straight in the eyes. "Back down. Don't go attacking someone until you have all the facts," she growled in a fierce tone like Sasuke did. "I have all the facts I need, so get out of my way." Naruto twisted his wrist to the side and forced Sasuke to one knee. "Your facts are wrong," glancing at Itachi as he nodded. "Itachi isn't guilty for killing your family, Sasuke. It was an order given to him by the council and Sarutobi." Sasuke froze slightly, but then rage filled his body. "And how would you know this? For all you know, he could be planting that information in you." Naruto scoffed at him. "That's impossible because I was there in the Hokage office after the massacre." "What were you doing in the office?" Sakura stepped up. "I was being taken care of after the 98th attempt on my life," Naruto said, but didn't remove her gaze from Sasuke. The Uzushio Nin turned away, not liking this part of her story in the least. "Then why didn't you tell me?" "I made a promise not to." "That's no reason." Naruto growled and slapped Sasuke across the head. "Listen to me, you fool. I did what I had to. If you calm down, I will even explain my reasoning. So just calm down." Sasuke stared at Naruto for a few moments before pulling his arm back. Then explain, he demanded. Sora stepped up to yell at Sasuke over his ignorance, but Naruto raised a hand to silence him. Quietly, she took a seat on the ground and motioned for the others to do so as well. First off, what you hear will not be talked about again unless you are in Uzushio. This is because only people there know about what Itachi did. This is not to reach Konoha in any way you hear. She got a nod from everyone and glanced back to Itachi. You guys probably wonder how I know Tachi. Well, I knew him before the incident in the Hotel Jiraiya, and I was staying at when I was 12. Tachi was the ENBU that used to watch over me when I was a child. I have to say I'm sure the attempts to murder me would have been for past 98 if Itachi wasn't there. On the night of the massacre, I had been walking home from the academy when I was attacked. It had been the dog-faced ANBU that had saved me that night. Naruto glanced at Kakashi and smiled at him. When I was in Sarutobi's office, Tachi had shown up covered in blood, and his entire body had been shaking. He explained to the third that he had completed his mission, but when he said he didn't kill you, Sasuke, that's when things got bad. Naruto huffed. Because he didn't kill you, he had to leave. Then Jiraiya came into the room, spouting some concerns about the Akatsuki. Naruto leaned on Itachi. When we finally figured out what he had said, Sarutobi came up with a plan to get information from them and still have Tachi as a Konoha nin. Yet it was his inside mission to protect me that brought him to his conclusion. That very night he left. Itachi wrapped an arm around her waist as comfort. Even after Tachi left, he still had to stay in contact with the stupid Gigi, and to Sarutobi was his first contact, but if he couldn't report to the old man, then he reported would come to me. Wait, why would they trust you with that responsibility? You were just a kid, and a dumb one at that, Sakura asked. Naruto stifled a laugh. I can see what you mean by that. I did act like quite an idiot back then, but that was so people would actually pay less attention to men. Ever heard of reverse physiology? But no, I was not as stupid as I acted. Sure, I wasn't all that strong, but that was because no one ever really bothered to train or teach me properly other than Irika-sensei. Kakashi winced at what she said, knowing it was the truth. He really had spent too much time worrying about Sasuke to realize that he was completely ignoring his other two students. After Sarutobi died, Tachi lost his need to be part of the Akatsuki. Other than to make sure they didn't go after me, there was no reason to stay. But when I disappeared for that first year, Tachi had used them to discover what had happened. Though it wasn't till I was almost dead did he finally manage to take us down. Naruto looked away as she said that last part. Her eyes began to water as she remembered what had happened. Flashback. Naruto had been dragged into a dense forest. She only wore a thin white yukata and had bruises, cuts, and other marks all over her skin. She had no idea why she was being taken into the forest, but she silently guessed it was because they had another seal to use her blood on. Something's different about them this time, kid. Watch your back, Kurama warned. Naruto nodded to her tenant's words, hoping he wasn't right. But she knew better. Kurama was almost always right about these things. She had learned this very quickly in the past few months. Discover more. Bookshelves. Online writing courses. Fan art prints, posters. In the beginning, Naruto refused to back down. She fought everything they did to her. It wasn't until they had tried to kill her for refusing to work with them that she had met Kurama. When she had woken up inside that seal, she had seen Kurama with his eyes filled with tears and sorrow. He had apologized to her, and the two had talked for a short while until Kurama popped her a question. Would you like to become my heir? That had been what he asked her. Naruto had questioned him, trying to figure out if he was just playing with her, but he had been serious as serious comes. This had brought tears to her eyes. After being alone for so long, it felt good to have someone be there for her. Kurama to know the feeling, so to show her just how sorry he had been, he allowed her to cry into his fur. It was then he started the ritual to change her DNA ever so slightly to turn her into a Hanayo. The pain Naruto went through to change had been far worse than even having an arm powered with Chidori drove through her chest, but Korm was there for her the whole time. After her change, she had become stronger, but not strong enough to escape. She put up with every form of torture they put her through for almost a year, until she had got to the point that she was then standing with her arms bound together and her captors looking at her with a strange gleam in their eyes. Before she could protect herself, she felt the painful strike of metal striking her across the back. She immediately fell to the ground, with blood seeping out of the new wound. Too bad. We have to kill her so soon. I was hoping to have more fun with her too, one of them said. Boss told us to kill her, so it doesn't matter anymore. Now Nomon, let's go back. She heard the shuffle of feet, and then they were gone. She didn't know how long she lay there. But the next noise she heard was the soft tapping of ninja shoes hitting the ground. Opening blurry, blue eyes, she looked up to see a very familiar face. He was crouching down and looking her over quickly. In a very rough tone of voice, Naruto closed his attention to her. He gently stroked her cheek before picking her up. "Hang in there," were the lost words she heard before blacking out. End flashback. Naruto was pulled out of her thoughts when a gentle hand was placed on her shoulder. She smiled at Itachi and mouthed, "I'm okay," to him. "That still doesn't explain why Itachi killed everyone," Sasuke growled. "I did what I did because I didn't want our family blood on the hands of rogue ninja. And if I had not done what I did, you would be dead too," Itachi answered before Naruto could. Discover more. Fandom-specific merchandise. Online reading platform. Writing contest management. "If you knew all this, why didn't you tell Sasuke?" Naruto. Sakura demanded loudly. Naruto looked up into the tree's leaves. "I was going to tell him that day we fought on top of the hospital, but he had got me so mad that all I could think about was kicking his ass. Then the next thing I know, he leaves the village to go to the pedo snake." Naruto sent a sharp glare at Sasuke. "I would have told him there too, but the fool was out of his mind and didn't listen to half the things I said." Sasuke winced slightly at the anger in her voice. Even her eyes were flickering back and forth between blue and red. But she suddenly stood up from her spot and glanced around. "Otto," Sora asked out loud. Naruto looked to the group with large eyes. "They're coming back. Go pack the things quickly, we have less than 10 minutes to get out of here." She spun around and ran to her and Itachi's tent. The Uzushio Nin ran from their spots getting ready as Naruto had done. Itachi stood from his spot and went after Naruto and started pulling the tent apart. The Konoha Nin followed the others' actions and quickly packed up their things as well. Naruto came out of what was left of her tent and went through quick complex hand seals, and then nipped at the soft skin on her thumb. In a cloud of smoke appeared 3 foxes. Koda and Kira were easy to pick out, but a new fox also stood before her. He had 9 tails, and his fur was flaming red. "Kit, give me more of my chakra, if you don't mind." Naruto nodded and focused on her chakra. Kurama's fox body began to morph into the shape of a human. When he was done, he stood as tall as Itachi, with long flaming red hair that was placed in a low ponytail. His eyes were sharp gold, and his face also had the whiskered marks as Naruto did. He wore soft, high-class Japanese cloths and dainty little slippers. "Stay close to either Itachi or me, Kit," Kurama said sharply before he hurried to help Itachi with other tents, while the other foxes moved as such around the camp for extra things. "Why we use tents again is a wonder to me," Naruto thought while her eyes twitched. She sped over to their side and helped as fast as she could. With the combined work from everyone, they managed to pack everything they needed in 7 minutes. "Let's get going now," Hakaru yelled as she ran into the trees. The others followed quickly after her. Naruto had been the last one to follow, but just as she pulled her body past the trees, she felt a sharp pain in her upper arm. She ignored it and followed after Kurama. He pulled her into his arms and quickly picked up his pace so he could lose the Nin following behind them. The others followed his example, and they easily lost the men. They stopped in a small clearing where everyone caught their breath. Kurama held Naruto in his arms, quietly comforting her. He set her on the ground, but didn't let her go, instead chose to hold her in his arms and heal her currently bleeding arm. Itachi stepped over and placed a comforting hand on the small of her back. Kurama looked into Itachi's eyes for a short moment before he gently passed Naruto over to him. "You watch over my Kit properly," he said before speeding off back towards the area they had come from, Koda and Kira at his side. Naruto's eyes opened wide, and she fought to escape Itachi's arms while yelling after Kurama. "Tusan," was all she yelled, fighting to free herself to her very best. "Let me go, Tachi," Naruto yelled at her love, who only strengthened his hold on her. "Kurama told me to watch over you until he got back, and that's what I'm going to do." Naruto looked up at him with tearful eyes. "He's going to get himself killed." "But it won't be today," Itachi replied calmly. Naruto sagged in his arms. "What's going on here?" Kakashi asked, walking up to them. Naruto made no motion to acknowledge him, but Itachi had turned to look at him. Kurama went to get revenge. Kakashi's eye became large at his words. "The Kyuubi no Kitsune is in this forest?" Itachi nodded to his question. How is that possible?" Irika asked shakily, coming up behind Kakashi. Itachi opened his mouth to reply, but Naruto beat him to it. "I summoned him," she said softly. "Why would you do that? That thing destroy our village," Sakura said harshly. Naruto gave her a feral growl. "Don't you dare ridicule him. He may be a demon, but he is far kinder than you in every way. You fat cow. Discover more. Email. Email. Website hosting. Digital book publishing. Book. Story writing guides. World building guidebooks. Beta reading editing services. Writing software. Plot generation software. Everyone's eyes widened, even Sasuke. None of them had ever heard Naruto call Sakura anything mean. Itachi pulled Naruto closer to himself as he saw the glare in Sakura's eyes. He wasn't afraid of her. No, he was afraid for her. No person was stupid enough to get a demon mad, half or full. It just wasn't a good idea. Sakura cowered slightly when Naruto glare hit her. The glare was far worse than any glare even an Uchiha could muster. Kakashi stepped up and removed Sakura from the scene. Naruto instantly relaxed. Itachi, you can let me go. Don't worry, I won't try to run after him. He'll only get mad at me if I did. Itachi reluctantly removed his hands and watched as Naruto sat on the ground, her eyes focused on the forest in front of her. Let's just rest here, Hikaru decided. The others nodded an affirmative. Naruto never moved from her spot, not when lunch was made, not when they made dinner. She moved for nothing. She didn't even move when everyone started making spots to sleep for the night, ditching the tents of course. It wasn't until a rustling in the leaves did she finally stand. Out of a bush, from the direction Kurama ran, Kota slowly emerged with Kira following closely behind. Kurama followed after the two, but his entrance was unglorified thanks to the fact Naruto had tackled him into a hug, surprising everyone when he didn't even have to steady himself. "Tusan, you had me so nervous. What took you so long?" Naruto gasped into his chest. Kurama gently lifted Naruto into his arms and held her on his hip, as though she was a child, and continued to walk towards the others. "They're gone now, Hikaru-chan," he said calmly, sitting down by their fire, with Naruto in his lap. Itachi sat next to him as well. "That's good. I figured you'd want to get rid of them," she said softly. Kurama hugged Naruto closer to his chest. "No, one hurts my kit and gets away with it," he growled. The younger people backed away from him, seeing that he was seething with anger. "What do you mean your kit?" Sakura asked. Kurama glared at her, causing the Banshee to back down slight. "She is my kit because she isn't only my heir, but I have adopted her as my own." As he spoke, he gently creased her head. "You your heir?" Irika asked. "Yes, my heir. I gave her my DNA, so she is biologically able to be the next heir of the Kitsune clan." "How is that possible?" Konohamaru asked. Kurama sighed. Humans were so stupid, they clearly would not understand unless he gave them an example. "Kit, can I remove the Jinjutsu?" he asked Naruto softly. She gave him a small nod. Kurama pulled his fingertips to his face and muttered the word release. There were several gasps around them as people saw the changes that happened to Naruto. She had 4 long, golden tails sprouting from her back and 2 fluffy ears on the top of her head. When she finally looked over to them, her once pure blue eyes had small flecks of violet, giving them an even bigger uniqueness. "Because she is my heir, she is a Hanyu half-demon. Do you understand now?" "Why would you turn her into a demon? She's too weak and not worth it," Sasuke sneered. Kurama growled at him. "She has every right to have my blood. She has gone through so many more trouble than any of you people have since she could even open her eyes. True, some of that is my fault, but this girl in my arms is far more worth my blood than any other person on this god-damned planet." The people stared in disbelief. It was made very clear that Kurama thought very lowly of them. Kurama stood from his spot and sat down at the base of a tree, taking Naruto with him. The others slowly moved away to do the same and sleep as well. Itachi calmly sat down at the same tree as Kurama and stroked Naruto's head for a moment and did his best not to wake her from her gentle slumber. When morning came, Naruto was nowhere to be found. Kurama still sat where he had been the night before. Their fire had been restarted, and there was yet again food waiting for them. "Where's Nachon?" Konohamaru asked the same question everyone else had been wondering. "She didn't want to be around when you woke up," Kurama said calmly. The others stared at him for a few moments, confused. "Why wouldn't she want to be here?" Hinata asked, confused. "You would have to ask her that yourself," he said blandly, making everyone look dejected, but they said nothing, more lost in their own thoughts. When they heard a rustle in the leaves, everyone saw Itachi coming back to the camp, Naruto's hand in his. Naruto had a sad, cold look in her eyes, but her grip on Itachi's hand got stronger. She still had her ears and foxtail out, and they could see that they were slightly puffed up in dislike. "Is the curse bothering you today?" Hikaru asked, breaking the silence. Naruto glanced at her and nodded. She hasn't been feeling well. She and I were walking around, and it seems she may have developed a stomach virus, Itachi said calmly. Not possible. Itachi, did you forget that demons can't get sick? Kurama said, raising an eyebrow. Then it must have been something she ate, he concluded. The people around them gave them questioning looks, but no one had the guts to ask what they were talking about. Nachan, will we be getting to the village today? Konohamaru asked as he limped to her side. Naruto let go of Itachi's hand and went down to Konohamaru's level. We'll be there in no time, but let me see your leg if you don't mind, she said, gesturing to his left leg. Konohamaru blushed from embarrassment, but let Naruto do what she wanted. In the end, after inspecting his ankle, she had found out that it had been strained. Sacrificing a small amount of chakra, she healed him enough so he could walk normal. Kurama came up to her side and rested his hand on her shoulder and smirked at the kind. If we're all done here, why don't we get a move on? Naruto nodded and allowed herself to be pulled up by Kurama. The group carried on with their journey with Naruto and Kurama by one another's side. Itachi had his hand on Naruto's waist, calming her and showing support as they continued on. Just as Naruto had said, they were home before the end of the day. Naruto and Kasumi took their places on either side of Hakaru. As they entered the village, the Konoha gasped as the people bowed respectfully to the three. The three of them stopped as a herd of children ran their way. Nachan, welcome home, with other cheers and yells of Nachan, Neru, Ruru, and other names called out as the children crowded around Naruto's legs. A happy, joyful smile graced Naruto's lips as she picked up two of the younger children in her arms. Discover more. Digital book publishing. Website hosting. Fanfiction writing prompts. Soku. Yumi, she said, rubbing her cheek against theirs. Hakaru turned to the group and smiled. Nachan visits the orphanage regularly. She's also a very big donator for all of the children. The others gaped slightly, yet Irika and Kakashi knew she probably didn't want those children to live the same way she had. All right, break it up, kids. Naruto-sama has to move on now. She needs to report in at the castle, Kurama said loudly. There were loud ahs as the children made room for Naruto and the other to get through, but Naruto stopped at the last moment and smiled back at the kids. If you behave yourselves, I'll bring a treat for you all, she called out to them and caught up with her group, who were casting amused glances at her. As they neared a large building that looked very similar to the Hokage Tower, but had much more complex, the others started to realize this was their castle. Stopping in front of the doors, the older female turned to the others. We will have to leave you here, but I'm sure Sora and Hoshi would be more than glad to lead you to your respected rooms, Hakaru said, smirking at her students, who grudgingly nodded their heads. Naruto and Katsumi walked in ahead of Hakaru, climbing the staircase up into their own rooms. The Konoha had been summoned into an empty room that had been filled with chairs and one long empty glass table. Thank you for waiting, a deep voice called from the door. The ninja found themselves facing a man in formal and expensive robes. He was clearly old, but looked to be in good health. Discover more. Beta reading editing services. Author promotion services. Plot generation software. Welcome to my castle, he said politely as one of the servants came and pulled out his chair. The ninja paled as they realized just who this man was. Irika and Kakashi quickly gave the man a polite bow to show their respect and growled at the others when they didn't move to do the same. The Daimyo didn't seem to care very much, considering he wasn't even looking their way but to the door instead. They looked as well, and some had to do a double take at what they saw. Naruto and Katsumi stood in the doorway. The two of them wore kimonos that went past their ankles and flowed to the ground. Naruto was light blue and had soft clouds dropping down the design. On the inside it was red, and from what little bit of her feet, they could see her traditional shoes and socks. Her hair was pulled into a soft bun and kept there with chopsticks. Katsumi was dressed in the same way, except her kimono was a soft peach that was covered with the kanji for water and fire. The two of them bowed respectfully to their grandfather. Irika himself could say it was definitely the first time he had ever seen Naruto bow. They raised their heads and calmly walked to his side. We have returned home, grandfather, Naruto said calmly. The old man extended his arm to the two girls, who instantaneously hugged him softly. How is your health? Katsumi asked softly. The old man smiled at her softly. It's been well, but I was bedridden for 2 days. That's not good, Naruto said calmly as he rested her hand on his cheek. It's all right, my dear. I will still live a while yet, he said softly. Naruto smiled softly and gently kissed the top of his head. She and Katsumi sat themselves on either side of their grandfather, and each one of them turned to look at the nin. Please sit, it seems strange to speak to you as you stand, the Daimyo said calmly. The group blushed and quickly sat in the vacant seats. Well, seeing as I know who you are, but you don't know me, my name is Uzumaki Kenshio. As you might have guessed by now, I am the Lord of Uzushio and the grandfather of my two girls here. He said the last part, gesturing to Naruto and Katsumi. Kakashi cleared his thoughts, slightly gaining attention to himself. Kenshio nodded to him to speak. If you don't mind me asking, why did you summon us? Ah, that is a simple question. I wish for you to take a treaty back to your Hokage when you return. Discover more. Personalized story critiques. Copyright protection services. Writing contest entry fees. Irika's jaw dropped. Why? Why would you want a treaty with our village after all that happened? That is because I don't want to force my granddaughter away, even if she was treated badly. That place was her home, and she has every right to visit it. Then, we will still be able to see Naruto even before Yoyu chose an heir? The elder man nodded. Though she will not be able to visit it first, for quite some time, you can still come here to see her. The others nodded and sent him smiles. Naruto stood from her spot and calmly kissed Kenshio's cheek before she walked to the door. Where are you going, Naruto? Kakashi called out. Naruto turned around with a blank face. Piano, she said calmly before walking out of the room. The nin sent each other questioning glances. Katsumi stood from her spot as well. Sorry, grandfather, he showed up on our way home. I'm sure it's wearing her greatly. Kenshio scowled. That man is becoming more daring. Watch out for her, Katsumi. I can feel it in the air. Something is coming. Katsumi frowned at him. I will protect her with my life. That girl has been through too much to go through this again. Kenshio nodded roughly and walked out of the room, his personal servant following after him. Katsumi looked to the others. If you would follow me. They nodded and followed after the petite redhead. She led them down several hallways until she stopped outside one door. She pressed one finger to her lips, signaling for silence. She opened the door slightly, and they could hear the soft playing of a piano before a gentle chime-like voice followed the words. I imagined Fujita Maiko's song Anata with Suki and Inat here. As the song ended, they heard the soft sound of hands gently clapping. Katsumi finally opened the door, firstly showing Naruto sitting in front of a grand piano, her eyes resting on Itachi, who had seated himself comfortably in a sofa at the corner of the room. Definitely the best pianist in the village, Katsumi said lovingly as she hugged her cousin from behind. Naruto smiled softly at her. Don't lie, I'm not that good. She looked to the door and saw the Konoha nin gaping at her. Even Sasuke had lost his cool exterior for a look of shock. A hard blush spread over Naruto's cheeks. Katsumi, why did you lead them here? Oh, don't be like that. You did beautifully. There's no need to feel embarrassed, Katsumi said jokingly. I'm going to kill you. Naruto jumped off the piano stool and tackled Katsumi to the ground. Katsumi started laughing loudly, which surprised some people. Get off, Kurama said sternly as he walked into the room. Naruto sent one last glare at Katsumi and then pulled herself off. Kurama walked to the piano stool and sat down. Come now, let's play another song. Naruto's eyes brightened, and she sat next to the old fox. How about something simple? He asked once she was seated properly. How about Last Butterfly? She suggested. Kurama nodded and placed his hands on the piano keys. Naruto following fluidly with his actions. Song plays here. Naruto smiled softly as the song came to an end. Kurama gently pulled her in a lost hug. You're just as good as I remember, he said lovingly. Naruto smiled at him and got up quickly. Discover more. Website analytics tools. Email. Subscription writing tools. San, I'm going to go out. Would you like to come along? Kurama smiled and nodded. Where are you going? Irika asked softly. Naruto grinned at him, a very similar foxy girl. Orphanage. She ran out of the room before anyone else could say anything else. Where did she run out to? Konohamaru muttered. To change, Kurama, Katsumi, and Itachi said at the same time. Again, Sakura asked loudly. Of course. Do you think she wants to get royal robes dirty? Katsumi said, walking towards the door. Oh, Kurama-san, could you take them outside with you? Itoko, and I will meet you there. Kurama smirked at the nin. Oh, and no throwing happy unless you want Itoko mad at you. Katsumi warned as a second thought. Kurama pouted and walked out the door and gestured for the others to follow. Throwing happy? Sasuke mumbled to Sakura. She too looked rather confused. Naruto stood in front of her mirror, calmly pulling out her dozens of hairpins when her door opened. She glanced up to see Itachi walking in. He calmly walked to her and placed a gentle kiss on her lips. "You still seemed worried," Itachi said calmly as he pulled Naruto closer to him. She gently nosed his neck and smiled against his skin. "I'm fine, Tachi. It's just that there's so many things happening at once. Just think, next month is the wedding, and I haven't even told the others yet." "I'll tell them. You just worry about your body. I know you can't take much more abuse. Not only have you been sleeping badly, but you're aggravating the seal. You need to be calm, my love." During his whole speech, Itachi had been gently rubbing the vein on Naruto's neck, affectionately calming her down. Naruto growled at him softly. "I'm trying, Tachi. Really I am, but what if they come for me and hurt everyone I care for?" "They won't, I promise. Everyone is fine. And Kinshio-sama is already working on having the Nin prepare himself for an ambush." Naruto sighed. "I guess you're right." Itachi nodded and pushed her into a seat and continued moving her hair clips. "Did you get rid of you-know-who?" Naruto asked softly. "Yes, Madara is gone. The seal you gave me to put on him worked as you said it would. His body completely rejected his soul. He is now no more than a lifeless corpse. I wish there could have been another way, but this was the only one that would get him by surprise." Naruto sighed out. "You're going to become another Shikamaru at the pace," Itachi said softly. Naruto broke out in laughter as she figured what he meant. "I would hope not. I don't want a pineapple for a head," she said as she regained herself. "Nor would I." Itachi extended a hand and pulled Naruto to her walk-in closet. "Please get dressed quickly. We don't want Kurama to go through his throwing happy phase." Naruto giggled. She had called it Kurama's throwing happy phase because he did just that, and any person in sight that he didn't like very much would be thrown at the nearest tree or wall. "I'll be right out then." Naruto found just what she feared she would. Kurama had already gotten mad at Sasuke and thrown him at the nearest tree. When she got there, she found him preparing to throw Sakura as well. "To-san." Naruto placed her hands on her hips and glared at Kurama. "Kit." Kurama yelped in surprise, dropping Sakura on her head. "What did I tell you about not throwing everyone you don't like?" Kurama hung his head in shame. "That the next time I do, I won't get any tummy rubs until that person is all right." "That's right, but you still missing one more thing," she said sternly. "I will also have to walk around out of my human form." Naruto nodded and removed the extra chakra she had been supplying Kurama. His body immediately turned into a fox, not a happy one either. "Now then, why don't we get going?" They continued on to the orphanage and were met with screams of joy as they arrived. Naruto curled up to several children and more than happily carried a few in her arms. The Konoha gang could only smile seeing their blonde in her zone. Eventually, they ended up inside where Naruto was attacked by a blonde look-alike. Naruto couldn't hold back the light laugh that escaped her as she looks the other blonde into her arms, holding on as if life depended on it. The group saw a young girl not much older than 4 clinging to Naruto with both her arms and legs. Both blondes had similar hair colors and blue eyes. They were staring into each other's eyes so intently that their noses almost touched, large grins on both faces. Had they not known was an only child, they would have never second-guessed that the two might have been siblings. "I missed you, Oka-chan," the blonde yelled loudly. Naruto mushed her cheek into the girl's with a happy smile on her face. "I missed you too, Aim-chan." The two completely ignored the looks they were receiving from behind them. When they heard a light chuckle, they turned to Itachi, who was looking at the scene in front of him fondly. It was then Irika connected the dots. You got her pregnant," he bellowed at Itachi, pointing an accusing finger at him. Itachi raised a brow at him. "Sorry to disappoint you, but the child isn't mine." Itachi gained a slight bitter look, but it was pushed away quickly. Hinata gasped when she figured out what Itachi meant. "No, you can't mean that happened to her," tears swelling into her eyes. Itachi shook his head. "The child is made from her chakra alone." Looks of confusion moved to the two blondes. When Naruto was attacked, her body had too much chakra and nearly killed her, but her body made to protect itself, and in that form created a child. On that would pull excess chakra from her body during pregnancy. "But why does she leave her own child in the orphanage?" Sakura yelled. Itachi smiled at her. "She doesn't. Aim simply likes to visit as much as Naruto does. This place is like a second home to them." "So how old is she?" Kakashi asked calmly. "She'll be 5 soon," Naruto said, walking up to them with her child on her hip. Itachi snaked an arm around her waist when she came into range. Aim outstretched her small arms to Itachi as if asking to be held. Naruto smiled and passed the young blonde over. I'll be back soon. I'm going to ask Barasan how things have been while I was away. Naruto leaned up and kissed Itachi's cheek and stroked her daughter's head before disappearing down a hall. Itachi fixed aim on his hip and turned back to the others. Where's my granddaughter? Hand her over. Kurama half-yelled, half-growled as he walked inside with Katsumi by his side, causing the others to stare at the talking fox. Katsumi snickered and gently took aim from Itachi, despite the young girl's protest, and placed her next to Kurama, who sniffed the girl before nodding and curling up to next her as Aim more than happy hugged her grandfather and nuzzled into his face. It was then they saw the orange spiral on the back of Aim's flawless white dress. Why do we keep seeing that spiral on your clothes? Konohamaru asked Katsumi. She smiled and bent down to his level. Though your village also used that spiral on your uniforms, it still belongs to Yuzushio. It's the ever-prideful symbol of the Uzumaki clan. When Aunt Kushina left for Konoha, Yuzushio had been attacked. Because more than half of our village was destroyed, we went into hiding, and Konoha took the symbol to pay tribute to us, thinking we had all died during the attack. Konohamaru nodded and glanced back at Aim, who had fallen asleep. Giggling behind them brought them back into the world. Naruto came walking back down the hall with an older woman. Naruto looked up and ran up to Itachi, smiled. Guess what Aim did? Itachi quirked his eyebrow at her, and she smiled wholeheartedly. Apparently, she thought that paint might be food. Itachi smiled at her. That's not very healthy. Naruto snickered. Yes, I think she found out quickly, from what I've been told. Naruto looked down at her daughter and gently pulled her into her arms and woke up Kurama. Tusan, if you promise not to start throwing people, then you can go back into your human form. Kurama thought for a moment before nodding. He quickly changed back into a human and laid a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Let's go home, you got what you came for. Naruto nodded and nuzzled her daughter again. Yes, my kid is very tired. The rest of them followed the two of them out and continued onto the castle once more. Sasuke was walking out of his room that evening, not being able to sleep, and wandered around the castle. It took some time, but he eventually found himself at a window. He stopped in his tracks when he heard Naruto's gentle voice coming from outside. He glanced once down the hall before jumping out the window and flipped himself so he would land on the small piece of roof above. The singing abruptly stopped, causing Sasuke to look up. Why? Naruto sat not too far away from where he landed. She was gazing at him calmly, with a soft smile on her lips. Nice of you to join us. It was then he saw the small bundle in her arms. She was having trouble sleeping, Naruto explained. Sasuke nodded and sat down next to her. Though he was mad that she kept the secret of his brother's innocence from him, he didn't feel like he could get over that. Do you remember when I chased after you, on the retrieval mission? Sasuke wondered where this topic came from, but nodded either way. I wish you had been listening to what I said then. I was so close to telling you Itachi was innocent, but with how crazy you were at that time, how could I be sure you won't try to attack our village? Sasuke stared at Naruto, slightly amazed by what she said. Before the massacre, a couple of drunken villagers had tried to kill me. They always did. That was why Itachi was the ENBU assigned to watch over me. Itachi hadn't been there that night. It had been so bad that Elven ENBU had to remove the villagers. When I was in the Hokage's office, it had been scary seeing Itachi coming covered in blood. He told the Hokage that Danzo had ordered him to kill the Uchiha clan, but he then found a document that had proved their innocence. At this point, her voice took on a hysterical tone to it. It only got worse when we found out what he had told you, hoping that you would hate him and not the village. Naruto shifted her blue eyes to Sasuke. He was shocked to see tears threaten to spill over. I am so sorry. I did my best to look out for you even if I didn't show it. I never wanted you to hate him, but I couldn't tell you. I promised. I promised. By now, Naruto was in full-blown tears, sobs racking her body. Sasuke paled. He didn't mean to make her cry. No, he didn't hate her or want this for her. If he had known that she had been beating herself up over this, he would have talked to her sooner. He quickly pulled her into his arms, child and all. Don't cry, please don't cry, he whispered softly. I'm so sorry, Sasuke. Please don't hate me from keeping this from you. I never meant to. Sasuke sighed and rested his chin on her head. I don't hate you. In some crazy messed-up way, I understand why Itachi asked you not to tell me. But I lied to you, she sobbed lightly. You didn't lie. You just never said the truth, but that's okay, I understand. You were only doing what was asked of you. Naruto shook her head and hid her face in his shoulder. Discover more. Writing contest entry fees. Copyright protection services. Reader community platform. I should have just told you. Her words were muffled by his shirt, but he knew what she meant. He took her shoulders in his hands and pulled her to his face so they were facing one another. Don't blame yourself for this. It's not your fault. I don't blame you. I could never blame you, because you're my Itamo. Naruto's eyes widened, and before Sasuke knew it, he had been pulled into a bone-crushing hug. Naruto didn't say anymore. She simply held on tightly to Sasuke. He had finally accepted her as a sibling. Kachan. Naruto glanced down and smiled at Aim, her tears falling on Aim's cheeks. It's okay, kid. Nothing's wrong, Naruto said, reassured. Sasuke gently put his hand on the younger blonde's head and ruffled her hair. Don't worry, sweetie, mommy and uncle were just talking, Sasuke said with a rare smile. Aim yawned and snuggled her face back into Naruto's shoulder. She's really cute, Sasuke whispered. Naruto nodded, but a sad look on her face, which made Sasuke wonder. Something wrong, he asked. Naruto shook her head and looked the other way. Naruto, do you have a problem with your child? She looked up and glared at him, causing him to sigh. Then what's wrong? Naruto sighed and rested her head on his shoulder. I just don't like remembering that time. Her voice was barely a whisper, but Sasuke heard it loud and clear. He held her gently in his arms for a while longer before he felt her breathing even out. He smirked at her and lifted her into his arms, child and all. Carefully, he jumped back into the building and traced down his brother's chakra signature. Following the direction it came from, he was careful to keep his feet from making noise. Only when he was outside Itachi's room, he knocked lightly on the door. Discover more. Author promotion services. Website hosting. Writing software. It opened to reveal a half-asleep Itachi with his hair down. Itachi looked at his face for a moment before he spotted Naruto sleeping in his arms. Without saying a word to one another, Itachi took Naruto and set her on the bed before going back to the door and nodding to Sasuke in thanks and closing the door. It had been 2 weeks and 3 days before the others finally caught on to the wedding. Naruto had been disappearing for hours at a time, not telling the others where she would go. They had tried several places like the orphanage or the piano room. They even began checking the shopping center, but they could never find her. It wasn't until Iruka followed her one day and saw her meet with a priestess. He hid himself to look like one of the others present and followed the two inside. As it turned out, Naruto had been going there for purification ceremony. During said ceremony, she would have to wear pure white gowns and bath in the purified water, not touching any living thing in the process. It wasn't until they were leaving the ceremony did he overheard them talking about the wedding. Thought the news was surprising, he chose to stay quiet over it and not tell anyone. It wasn't his secret to tell. Later the evening, he confronted Naruto about it. She explained that it would have to be kept sacred for the rest of the week. This was a rule set by the priest so that her ceremony would go uninterrupted. When Iruka asked why she was doing the ceremony in the first place, her only answer was tradition and said nothing more about it. It was at the end of the week when Naruto was once again missing. Itachi and Katsumi gathered everyone together in the meeting room once again. They were all agitated at the fact that no one would tell them what was going on. That is until Itachi walked in with Aim on his hip and Katsumi right behind him. Hi guys, Katsumi said happily. What are we doing in here? Kakashi asked calmly. Naruto asked us to explain a few things to you, Katsumi answered. Itachi sat in one of the seats calmly and waited for the others to do so too. Once they were all seated, they all looked at the Uzushio Nin expectantly. Naruto has been going to ceremonies that are customary in our village. These ceremonies are to purify the body, mind and soul before the princess or any royal is wed, Katsumi explained. The others stayed quiet until Hinata gasped. Why, you mean in Naruto, I is going to be married soon? Katsumi and Itachi nodded. It's also a custom that we are married before either of us can take throne. I will be wed in a few months as well, Katsumi said. When's the wedding? Everyone turned to Sasuke, who looked calmly at the situation. It'll be in 1 week from now, Itachi said. Sasuke nodded and stood up. I know all I need to know for now then. With that, Sasuke left the room. Where is that old fox? Konohamaru asked out loud. Discover more. Fan art commissions. Character design commissions. Community forum software. Kurama is with Naruto. Today is the final day of purification, and as a tradition, the father of the bride-to-be must attend the final cleansing. As Naruto's blood father is dead, but her adoptive father, Kurama, is alive, he must attend, Katsumi chuckled. Kurama had wanted to go to more than one of the cleansing to give Naruto his support, but he was kicked out every time. He had been hardly seen by everyone because he would spend hours sulking about it in his room. After the meeting, the Konoha ninjas were surprised to see Naruto returning with Kurama and Sasuke by her side. She and Kurama both were dripping with water. They were later told that Sasuke had waited outside the ceremony grounds for her. The week had passed quickly for them. Naruto, Itachi, Kurama, and Sasuke all spent most of their time with wedding preparations. Konohamaru, Iruka, and Hinata spent their time taking care of Aim, as her mother and father were busy. Kakashi would disappear for hours, only coming back after reading his pervert books. Sakura was the only one left with nothing to do, thus bringing her to the end of her line. Sasuke had been ignoring her more than usual, and instead of spending his time with Naruto, she was slowly forming a plan to separate them, but every time she tried something it would backfire and only make her angrier. It was recently after one of her field attempts that she found herself wandering in the forest outside the village. She was covered in pink paint and green feathers. She was also sporting a red hand print on her right cheek, courtesy of Naruto. Sakura's paint had gotten all over the papers that they had been filling out, causing them to have to start all over again. Sakura didn't feel that she was doing anything wrong. After all, it was the demon who was stealing her Sasuke-kun. Sakura continued to wander around until she heard the snap of a twig behind her. She spun around to see a man. This man had short brown hair. His eyes were of light silver. He wore a white coat she could have sworn she had seen once before, but couldn't place it. He smiled at her and calmly walked towards her. "It looks like you've had a rough day." His voice was like silk to her ears. She felt her cheeks heat up and couldn't get any words out at first. "My name is Kian. What's yours if you don't mind me asking?" "S. Sakura," she stuttered out. Kian extended a hand to her. "Well then, Sakura-san, if you want to clean up, you can come with me. One of my assistants can help you." Sakura blushed again. "I don't want to be a bother." "Oh, it's no bother at all." Sakura took his hand and allowed him to pull her away, missing the slow smirk that spread onto his lips. Part 1 is now set in motion, he thought evilly. Naruto was walking around her room, fuming mad. Even the Uchiha brothers had backed away from the terrifying blonde. How dare she? Naruto turned to the brothers with tears in her eyes. "Really, for the past few weeks, she has been doing everything to humiliate me." Itachi sighed, while Sasuke winced at her yell. "It's my fault," Sasuke said calmly. "You know how much she stalks me. She's clearly trying to get back at you for spending time with me." Naruto huffed. "Well, that's just stupid. I'm marring Itachi, for heaven's sake." Discover more. Writing contest management. Fanfiction books. Audiobook narration services. But when has that Pepto-Bismol bottle ever been smart? Sasuke said angrily. Naruto growled again and flopped onto Itachi's lap, causing him to grunt at the sudden weight. "Why did she ever come here with us? She's going to ruin everything." Naruto pouted as she finished her rant. "Let's not dwell on that anymore. Let's just get back to rewriting the papers," Itachi said soothingly as he rubbed the small of Naruto's back. Naruto sighed and nodded, picking up her pen again and started writing the food list down again. With Sasuke's and Itachi's help, Naruto had finally finished her paperwork. They hadn't seen Sakura since she had left. Naruto didn't dwell on that too much thought. It was only 2 days till the wedding, and Naruto had to get her wedding kimono finished. Naruto spent several hours finishing plans and spending time with her slightly love-deprived child. It wasn't until the night before the wedding Sakura showed up again. Katsumi had been the first one to see her. The girl looked perfectly fine. In fact, she was smiling manically. Seeing as Katsumi was busy at that time, needing to go to Naruto's room and deliver medicine for her upset stomach, Katsumi chose to ignore her and hurry down the hallway. The next morning, Naruto was still out of it and still very pale. Itachi had to leave the room and left Naruto to get into her ceremonial robes as he did the same. Naruto sat comfortably on a lush chair as one of the servants arranged her hair to look delicate flower. Katsumi was pacing around the room again, casting worried glances at her cousin. She still hadn't told Naruto about Sakura, but she had told Sora. This was, of course, because the two of them shared a room, seeing as Sora was her own betrothed. Sora was always really flirtatious, but he was still loyal to her, and always would be. She, to tell the truth, loved Sora very much. Every quirk, every stupid catch line. She loved everything about him. It was thanks to him that she hadn't broken down with worry yet. He had suggested that she hold this secret for a bit longer, seeing as Naruto was ill. It wouldn't be good to tell her about the giant bubble gum walking around, though he had suggested that she keep an eye out while he did the same. "All done," the gray-haired servant said with her strange accent. Katsumi looked at Naruto. She was beautiful. She wore a dark, blood-red kimono. The kimono was made out of a soft silk-like material, which was also light, and looked like puffs of smoke if she moved quickly enough. Her hair had been put into two braids that circled one another and blended into a bun with small gold bells that hung from chopsticks. The obi was a shiny gold that attracted eyes to her curvy waist. She had soft makeup that covered her pale face and gave her color. Her lips had been painted blood red, and the arch around her eyes had been slightly fanned over with a reddish pink. In all, she looked stunning, her blonde hair contrasting with the red, and her blue eyes clashed with her hair, bringing the detail out completely. Kasumi smiled and offered her hand to Naruto. "You look amazing," Katsumi said softly. Naruto gave her a weak smile and allowed Katsumi to lead her out of the room. They walked through long hallways towards the ceremony room. When they got to the doors, Kurama stood clad in dark black robes with his arms crossed over his chest, but a happy smile on his face when he saw Naruto. He took her hand into his and kissed the crown of her head. "You look amazing." Naruto smiled at him and rested her hot forehead on his shoulder. He frowned at the warmth and placed his hand on the back of her head and threaded his chakra into her to help heal her. He frowned when he realized what was making her weak. He glanced at Katsumi and saw that she too saw that Naruto had something wrong with her. He mouthed the word later to her and received a nod. Moving Naruto's arm to lace around his, he pushed the door open and started walking, and Katsumi followed behind them. They entered a long room with people filling every seat. The Konoha sat at the front with Sasuke, holding aim in his lap. Naruto was guided towards the font and almost unwillingly let go by Kurama. She sent him a light smile and took her place next to Itachi. Kurama and Katsumi sat next to one another and couched low so the others wouldn't hear what they would say. "She has a light poison running through her body," Kurama said, getting right to the point. Katsumi gasped lightly in shock. How could that happen?" she whispered harshly. "It was digested, that much is clear, seeing as she had the stomach pains first. I think she'll be okay, she's never really been weak to poisons." Katsumi turned to Naruto, a frown marring her face. She and Kurama watched the ceremony take place. It was a simple one, just saying their vows and promising their life to one another. It was as they were saying their promises that a low rumbling started to fill the shrine. Naruto turned to Kurama and Katsumi, her expression telling them that it looked like she had been expecting this. She had gripped Itachi's hand harder as she turned back to the priest. "Run!" Just as the words left her mouth, the door burst open. The room began to fill with people in white robes. Itachi pulled Naruto to him as the ninjas in the room began to attack the intruders. Naruto's eyes flickered around the room as Itachi pulled her away. Naruto's eyes widened when she saw the bubblegum pink hair zip towards Katsumi. Sakura wore the white cloak and had a cruel look on her face. Before Naruto could do anything, she saw that the people in the room began to fill out, leaving the Konoha, minus Sakura, in the room alone. Naruto gazed around at the distraction that had happened in so few minutes. Seats were split in half, walls with body-size holes, kuni on every surface, and all the white curtains were shredded. She felt tears gather in her eyes, but the raspy call of her name broke her out of her thoughts. She glanced at everyone, but her eyes landed on the bloody and battered Sasuke, who leaned heavily against the wall. She ran to him, quickly discarding the fact that her kimono ripped lightly as she ran past a sharp piece of wood. She got to Sasuke just as he was about to fall and helped him to his sitting position. Quickly, she began healing him with her chakra. He only let her heal enough to stop any major wound before he took her hands in his and turned her face to his. "They took her," he rasped out. Naruto scrunched her brows together, but then she realized what he meant. Aim was gone. Naruto let out a heartbreaking sob. The others had refused to let her go after Aim. They all knew it was obviously a trap. Kurama held Naruto in his lap. Tears were pricking at the corner of his own eyes. He only whispered sorry to her every so often, but Naruto didn't seem to hear him. Sasuke had been taken to the hospital ward where had been healed, and now he slept. The other ninja could only watch as their blonde sobbed, lost to the world in her sorrow. Katsumi was shaking in the place she stood. Sora was gently holding her hand, acting as a comfort for his wife-to-be. The two of them were feeling helpless and guilty over not telling anyone about Sakura, but it was too late now. Aim was already taken. "We have to get her back," Naruto sobbed into Kurama's chest. "Shoo, kid, I promise you we will," Kurama said softly. Naruto sobbed again and ignored everyone for the rest of that evening. The next day, her eyes were red and puffy, her voice was high and shaky. like she was ready to break down crying again, while her skin looked pale. During the morning, everyone left he alone. Only Kurama would talk to her without her snapping at them. It was finally evening when everyone realized Naruto and Kurama had stopped coming out of their room. Sasuke, who was finally out of the hospital but was told not to do anything too hard, had gone up to Naruto's door. He rapped on it several times but got no answer. Worry getting the better of him, he opened the door and nearly growled at what he saw. The room was empty, save for the furniture and other normal things, but Naruto and Kurama were gone. Sasuke ran as quickly as his body would let him and went for the living room where everyone else sat. Naruto's gone. She's not in her room, and nor is Kurama. If looks could kill, everyone in a 10-mile radius would have been burnt to the ground because of the look Itachi had on his face. We have to stop her. She's going straight into a trap, Hinata yelled. Everyone nodded and moved towards the door, but Sasuke's body wouldn't have it. The Shinin next to him caught him before he could hit the ground. Go on. I'll stay home with Sasuke-kun and watch over him. Hinata growled when everyone looked back at them. The group nodded and hurried along and ran after the footprints they found by Naruto's window. The trail ends here, Sora said in distress. Kakashi growled as he looked at the tall trees in front of them. It looks like we need Pakun. Kakashi bit his thumb and slammed his hand in the ground. What can I do for you? The brown pug asked once the smoke dispatched. We need you to track Naruto down. Pakun nodded and started sniffing, his ears picked up when he finally found her scent. Follow me this way. The ninja did just that. It felt like forever that they continued to run, but soon they heard an ear-splitting scream. Sharing glances between one another, they quickened their pace. Discover more. Writing software. Website hosting. Fan fiction anthologies. When they came into the clearing, it was hard for them not to lose their lunches. In the middle of all the gore, Naruto stood, clawed hand holding the head of a brown-haired woman by the hair. Around the blonde lay several other decapitated bodies. Even their guts lay spread across the clearing. Naruto herself looked as though she had come from a war. Her clothes were ripped, showing every wound. Her hairband had broken and was left on the ground, causing her hair to fly wildly around her body. Her teeth were sharp and bared at everyone around, her eyes sharp and red. Lastly, she was covered in a light filming of blood. Naruto! Katsumi screamed as she tried to run to her Itoko, only for Kakashi to hold her back. Naruto's red eyes flickered over to them, but no recognition showed. She growled and turned around, jumping back into the trees. What the hell was that? Konohamaru yelled. Shush and let's hurry. I just know something bad is going to happen, Sora said with a worried face. The others gave a positive nod and hurried after their crazy blonde. Naruto continued to run through the trees, her fox-enhanced senses telling her which way to go. Her mind was fogged with the want for revenge. Revenge she would get. Discover more. Digital book publishing. Book. Website analytics tools. As she broke coverage, she found herself staring at a sight that made her legs go weak. On a sacrificial stone, her own little baby laid, blood seeping from her mouth, blonde hair clumped with blood that leaked from a large wound on her stomach, and her light blue eyes blurred with silent pain. No, no, Naruto yelled as she ran towards her child. Stop, kid, Kurama growled from behind her. She turned to look at him like he was crazy, but the genuine worry in his eyes made her stop. Be on guard, kid, they're here somewhere, he warned. Naruto bit her lip and looked back to her child. She wouldn't last much longer, maybe a few minutes more if she didn't receive medical attention now. Sorry too, San, Naruto whispered before she ran to the table and picked her child off it and ran as quickly as she could towards Kurama. Hearing the sound of feet behind her, she pushed her body even faster until she was in front of the great fox demon. She pushed aim to his chest and gave him a pointed look, telling him what she wanted him to do. He wrapped his arms around the whimpering child and gave Naruto a nod. Don't let them get you. I'll be back soon, he whispered. Naruto nodded and turned around, her eyes set at a sharp glare. You won't get me alive, she screamed at Kuromaki, who had joined the crowd with grinning Sakura by his side. Whoever said I wanted you alive? He asked, smirking, Sakura laughing by his side. Then what do you want with me? She yelled, tears leaking into her eyes. Why? Just more of your blood, of course. All of it, to be exact. Naruto's eyes hardened. Then why did you take my aim? Koro smirked. What better way to get a mother than to take her daughter? Naruto's eyes flashed back to red as Kurama's chakra leaked around her. And you had to do those things to her too? At this he just laughed. Sure, you should have seen how happy he looked, cutting through her stomach. slowly though her skin and muscle. Sakura cackled. Naruto's brain snapped at her words. Everything went red, and she flashed into a compulsive murmur. Discover more. Author promotion services. Custom fan fiction writing. Character merchandise apparel. She continued this until she felt a strange pinch on her neck. Reaching up with her hand, she grasped hold of the strange object. Bringing it to her face, she saw a simple Sindan needle, but it was the purple liquid that made her eyes widen. Before she could say anything, her world went black. When Kurama returned with the other Nin, they all gasped. There were bodies with blood and slaughter everywhere, but one thing was missing. Naruto was gone. Kurama fell to his knees. They took her. Itachi growled by the fox's side. We have to hurry, they're probably going to kill her this time around. The others nodded and hurried after a long trail of blood, Pakun still sniffing to make sure they were going to the right way. Itachi looked to the sky frowning. Clouds were gathering, meaning it was going to rain soon, and that meant the scent trail and blood would be washed away. He glanced back at the others. We have to hurry. His statement was met with everyone else pushing their bodies on. It ends here. Pakun's voice rang out as he stood on the ground. The rain had begun to fall not too long ago, but now that the trial had ended, it wouldn't matter anymore. The Nin looked around trying to find where the enemy could have gone, but it was the horrid, bloody scream that alerted them that needed to go underground. Katsumi growled and gathered chakra into her hand and slammed it into the ground below, causing the ground to crumble under their feet. The screams doubled as they fell through the hold. Glancing around, they saw that they were in a dark tunnel made of stone. Itachi and Kurama took off immediately after the screams, hoping for the best. But the best was not what they got once they ran through the open doorway. Katsumi screamed at what she saw. Konohamaru stopped breathing. Kakashi felt like he would hurl. Sora's brain stopped working. And Iruka fell to his knees. Naruto was attached to a large table that had large spikes that went through her body and was the only thing holding her up. All the spikes missing any important or vital spots, but went straight through her entire body. From the wounds, her blood continued to leak into an awaiting tray below, slowly catching every droplet. Naruto's screams were growing weaker as she continued to hang there. Kuro and Sakura stood watching the whole scene with smirks on their faces. Come to watch the show now, have you? Kuro asked gleefully. Let her go, Katsumi rasped out. What was that? I didn't hear you, girly, Kuro taunted. Let her go, Katsumi said a bit louder this time. I still can't hear you over all this yelling. For the effect, he put his left hand to his ear. I said let her go, Katsumi yelled, rushing at the brunette. Discover more. Writing software tools. Online reading platform. Fan convention tickets. Kuro laughed maliciously as he easily avoided the red head, leaving Sakura in his wake. Sakura, not expecting to be left alone, was not prepared for the chakra-induced punch that slammed into her face, courtesy of Katsumi. She flew straight at the wall, causing it to crumble around her. We trusted you. She trusted you. Katsumi yelled, going in for another attack, leaving Kuro to the others. Sakura was going to be her prey, and her prey only. Kuro snickered as he watched the red and pink-haired girls duke it out, but his head snapped to Naruto when he heard the screaming stop. Kurama and Iruka were already pulling the blonde off the wall. Kuro's smile fell. What do you think you're doing? He asked in an annoyed tone of voice. What does it look like? Konohamaru growled, getting in Kuro's path with Itachi and Kakashi by his side. Sora ran to Naruto's side, knowing he would be more help there than with the other Nin. The moment Naruto was pulled off and set on the floor, he went to work on healing her wounds. Don't die on me, Otto. Don't you dare die. Naruto opened her hooded eyes, showing sparkling blue. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She grimaced slightly, but turned to smile at him. She lifted her still bloody hand to his face and patted it. She then moved it to Kurama's. I'm sorry, she mouthed. Lastly, she turned to Iruka and smiled at him as well before her arm gave out and her eyes fluttered closed. In Naruto, Sora yelled and pushed more chakra into her slowly healing wounds. Kuro chuckled at the sound of Sora's yells. It looks like you were too late. Not that it bothers me. I have all of the blood I need. His eyes took on a crazed look. Itachi's body locked in place. His love was likely dead now, and his adopted daughter was on the verge of that line as well. And all because of this man. Itachi's hands flew through hand sings before he activated his Sharingan. You're going to regret that, he growled out, sprinting forward and capturing the man's face to place him under a Jinjutsu. The tortured pain showed on his face as blood seeped from the seams of his lips. When Itachi pulled away from the jutsu, Kuro fell over, body twitching unnatural, until he somehow pulled himself to his feet. Haha, you think that's going to work on me? Well, it won't. Thanks to my little toy over there, I was able to make the ultimate serum to heal any of the worlds I get. It's perfect. Why else do you think her blood was so important? She is a demon after all. Kakashi growled. Naruto was no demon, no, only the people of Konoha were. He looked to the two on his sides and gave them a simple nod. They each filled chakra to their hands, gathering their techniques. The Chidori for Kakashi, Rasengan for Konohamaru, Itachi calling forth the final stage his eyes would allow, though it was only in the beginning stage, his Susanoo. The three moved in together, striking at Kuro again, receiving gaping holes in his body, as well as his arm catching on fire. Kuro laughed meekly as he fought against the boys, but it has a kunai to the chest that ended his movements. Everyone looked to where the kuni had come from, only to see Naruto's body falling back to the ground where her blood had gathered around her. Her fox ears and tail were showing clearly, signaling that she had lost complete consciousness. Kuro gasped for breath and pulled the kunai out, which caused the wound to bleed freely. He turned around, eyes to the others before falling over dead. At that moment, Katsumi walked up with a beaten and bruised Sakura being dragged behind her. She dropped the pinkett next to Kuro and ran to Naruto's side. She found Sora panicking and doing what he could, but his chakra supply was running low. She took charge and healed the larger wounds before moving to the smaller ones. "Oh, how is it?" Konohamaru asked, walking up to them. "She's not out of the hell storm yet, but she'll live," Katsumi said gravely. "We need to get her to Hakaru-sensei, it's her only hope," Sora stated. Itachi nodded and pulled the blonde princess into his arms. "Let's hurry. Kakashi, Irika, please bring these pieces of trash with you," Itachi said calmly before he sprinted for the entrance with Katsumi, Konohamaru, and Sora by his side. "Mommy, when are we going to get there?" A small female voice sounded through the clearing of trees. A soft chuckle followed the child's voice. "We'll be there soon, don't worry so much, Aim." The young girl named Aim pouted, her long blonde hair covering her light blue eyes, her hands moving to tug at the end of her dark red skirt. "Oh, let her be, Kit, she just wants to see everyone. After all, it has been 6 years since she has seen them all in one place." An older male voice sounded besides the tall blonde-haired woman. "Kurama, I know that," she snapped playfully. "Naruto, be calm please, you're going to wake up Kiski," another male voice said. Naruto pouted. "Oh, shush Itachi, Kiski is going to wake up soon anyway," she said, looking at the small bundle in her arms. Kiski was no older than 3 years old, but he was so cute. He had black hair like his father's, but his eyes were just like his mother's. Like Aim, he was full of energy and always wanted to play. Though Aim was 8 years older than her brother, she still loved him with all her heart. Right on cue, Kiski opened his eyes. "Pei," he asked after all sleep was gone from his face. Naruto chuckled before she placed him on the ground. He almost immediately ran up to his One-chan and grabbed hold of her hand. Naruto's smile turned a bit sad. She couldn't believe that she almost didn't get to live like this with her family. When Itachi had finally got her to Hakaru, she had stopped breathing. Hakaru spent days getting her back to normal after her breathing was back to normal, but it didn't change the fact that she was in a coma for 6 months before she woke up. The first thing she had seen was Aim. She held on so tight to her child, it was almost as if she wanted to never let her go again. The next day, she had begun to go through steps to start walking again, but to her amusement, no one talked about Sakura's betrayal. It wasn't until she asked herself that she found out that Sakura had been taken back to Konohana and given to Ibiki and Anko to receive punishment. That brought a smile to her face. It was also then that she found out Sasuke had been visiting the village almost every month. The rest of that year, Naruto and Itachi had finally gotten their proper wedding. Later on, Naruto finally gotten pregnant again, though it was hard because one of the spikes had stabbed her in the uterus, making her very susceptible to miscarriages, yet she had managed to give birth to Kiski. Itachi was overjoyed to have his own son at last. Naruto felt life was going well watching her family. She had turned down the chance to become the next ruler of Uzushio, and Katsumi had taken up the mantle their grandfather had finally passed on a year ago, seeing as his illness had taken a turn for the worse. He died a peaceful death at the very least. That had been the last year, but now she was traveling to Konoha to visit her special, original family she made herself. She looked up at the sound of her children's squeaks and cheers. Seeing her kids run up to their uncle who stood holding his wife's hand, that wife being Hinata. Aim and Kiski ran up to their uncle and aunt attaching themselves to their legs. "Itoko, Sasuke said softly as he took Naruto into his arms when she was at arm's length. Naruto smiled at Sasuke's smile. Hinata had been doing a great job getting him to open up. He was so much nicer now. Naruto's head shot up, knocking into Sasuke's chin as she remembered something very important. Ramen, she yelled as she ran through Konoha's gates, her children following and giggling with joy at the heavenly food. She never changes, does she? Sasuke asked, rubbing his chin. No, and I hope she never does, Itachi said fondly. Kurama and Hinata chuckled at the two brothers and Naruto's strangeness. Come on, let's go before our family gets too big and dead. Even selling Yuzushio will be too little. The four followed after the crazy ramen-obsessed family, mourning the pain their wallets would feel soon.